him dead, he would help her kill him. Yuumingkong was shocked that he would help her kill whomever she wanted. She couldn't help but smile, thinking that Master Gu was probably the only person who could say something so sinister while being so at peace. She now believed that if she was the only reason he wanted to kill Yuling, that meant he actually cared about her, even if just slightly. The system informed him that the favored daughter of heaven, Yuumingkong, had changed her attitude, resulting in an increase of 800 luck points and 400 fate points. He tried to ask her again, and she shyly replied that she had happened to catch a glimpse of the inheritance of the ancient heavenly emperor of reincarnation in some old scrolls. However, when she went to look for it, she found out that Yuling had already gotten to it before her. He pretended to be shocked, jokingly saying that meant she wanted to kill someone and steal their treasure. He expressed his surprise at Yuumingkong's ruthlessness, saying he had thought the other party had offended her, but it turned out she was the one plotting to murder him for his opportunity. He hadn't thought Yuumingkong would be such a person. Embarrassed, Yuumingkong stared at the ground, realizing that he wasn't in a position to scold her. She tried to hit him, saying he was hardly a good person himself and that he was the ruthless one. How could she even compare to him? He continued to annoy her, blocking her attack and holding her hand. He told her that he meant that if she wanted to do something like it, he would handle it for her. He couldn't let such a small inconvenience dirty the hands of his precious lover, making her blush. Meanwhile, the elders were in a meeting, discussing the opening of the Immortal Road, which was now an inevitable event. Young geniuses from various major heritages have gathered at the ancient heavenly city, eager to enter it. This prompts the elders to discuss their thoughts on the matter. One elder believes that the issue needs further discussion, as the Immortal Road is a mysterious and dangerous place. If the disciples were to be injured or lose their lives while venturing there, it could lead to awkward situations for the elders who may be blamed for not providing sufficient protection. This sentiment is supported by a female elder. Although there are many opportunities within the Immortal Continent, numerous dangers also exist. Different regions of the continent can be unpredictable and potentially harmful. Even the female elder would need time to adapt to the structure of the place, let alone the younger generation entering it for the first time. The possibility of a large number of them getting hurt or even dying is significant. The fiery elder suggests that if it were up to him, he would let the young disciples go at their own risk. Since they are eager to join, they should not hold the elders accountable if anything goes wrong. This opinion is met with agreement from the other elders. Despite the gathered young supremes being a formidable force, it would be embarrassing for the Taoist Immortal Palace, as the host, if they failed to achieve success in this event. The fiery elder points out that among the 5 true disciples in the palace, Chu Union has returned to the great Chu Immortal Empire with a damaged Tao heart, and the other 3 are in seclusion. In his eyes, the remaining true disciples are not skilled enough to represent the palace, causing the other elders to hesitate. The Great Elder notices their gaze and asks why they are looking at him in this manner. He wonders if they think he would take revenge on a private matter in public or if they cannot think of anyone to choose for this situation. The Elder responds that the Great Elder is a generous person, and they would not assume that he would seek revenge on the younger generation. However, if they were to send young Master Gu, his current position would still be problematic. The Great Elder believes that this opportunity would provide young Master Gu with enough leverage to attain his desires. Despite his elusive and incalculable actions, young Master Gu remains a disciple of the Taoist Immortal Palace. No matter how selfish he may be, he wouldn't dare turn his back on the palace and end the line of ancestors. The Gold Elder adds that, in his opinion, young Master Gu representing the palace is not a bad idea. He is the strongest among his peers and possesses the temperament of someone they can rely on. Thus, he deserves a status befitting his abilities. The position of the heir has been vacant for some time, and it is an issue that must be resolved. However, before the Gold Elder can finish speaking, the Great Elder interrupts, stating there is no need for further discussion. He understands the situation and will take the embarrassment upon himself, deciding to visit young Master Gu. Meanwhile, Xioner breaks through and is visited by Yuumingkong. Yuumingkong acknowledged her study under the Great Elder and was bored, so she decided to pay Xioner a visit. She also reveals that her brother, Master Gu, has left the Immortal Palace, and she is not aware of his whereabouts. This news upsets Xioner, and Yuumingkong notices her expression. Yuumingkong warns Xioner not to be easily provoked and advises her not to start a conflict with her brother until she has refined her own skills. She promises to think of ways to protect Xioner until she is strong enough. Surprised by her kindness, Xioner thanks Yuumingkong but declines her help. Yuumingkong admits that she may be trying to alleviate her own guilt and uneasiness by helping Xioner, and perhaps repay some of the wrongs Master Gu has committed. Xioner realizes the depth of Yuumingkong's feelings and learns more about her one-sided relationship with her brother. She sees Yuumingkong as someone pitiful and deserving of sympathy. At this moment, Master Gu reflects on his recent cultivation progress. After absorbing all the resources Yinmei collected for him, his cultivation ascended to the Heavenly God realm. Now, he only needs to monitor Yuling's whereabouts, which would make dealing with him from the shadows easier. As a transgressor, Yu Mingkong's greatest ability is to predict future events, so she likely knows about more opportunities than Yiling. Originally, Master Gu wanted to learn more about Yiling from her, but she left the Immortal Palace shortly after he departed. Master Gu concludes that she must be visiting Xioner when he is suddenly approached by the Great Elder. Greeting him, Master Gu wonders what brings the Great Elder to see him. The Elder retorts that he doesn't need permission to go anywhere within the Immortal Palace. Master Gu agrees and adds that he is feeling tired and was about to rest. If the Great Elder has no intention, he requests that he return, which angers the Great Elder. Young Master Gu advises the Great Elder not to threaten him with Xioner, as it won't work. This further infuriates the Great Elder. As their argument continues, Xioner and Yumingkong arrive at the scene, questioning the meaning of the commotion. Master Gu accuses Xioner of planning to take revenge on her brother after ascending her realm. Before Xioner can respond, the Great Elder stops her and asks her to remain calm. The Elder then inquired if young Master Gu still remembered the bet they made that day, mentioning that Xioner standing before him today might have the chance of gaining the upper hand. He responded that he, of course, remembered their bet, stating that if she couldn't beat him, he would let her have the position of heir. However, she had only just ascended to the conferred Lord realm. Mockingly, he asked if the Great Elder couldn't wait for him to take up the position of heir or if he was now competent for that role. While the Elder tried his best to control his anger in front of his disciple, Master Gu pointed out that the Elder was putting too much importance on the position of heir, speaking as if he couldn't live without it. The Elder asked if he was asking for more than what he was worth, pondering if he had anticipated this development. Master Gu replied that it didn't need to be framed like that, as this was something beneficial to both parties. How could he be asking for more than his worth? Hearing this made the Elder laugh, admitting he had met many shameless people but had never encountered anyone as shameless as him. He then asked what he needed to give him to secure his agreement, warning him not to overstep. Master Gu's request was simple. He would be the future palace master, and the Elder would owe him a favor. He reassured the Elder that he wouldn't go overboard with the favor. This made the Elder consider that, whether it was the future position of palace master or a personal favor from him, both conditions were reasonable and within his capabilities. There was no reason for him to decline this offer. It seemed that everything that had transpired so far was within Master Gu's calculations and intricate schemes, and the Elder had underestimated him. Consequently, he agreed to the requests. Master Gu stated that the Elder's words were reassuring, but he still wanted him to swear on this matter by his Tao heart, which triggered the Elder's anger once more. Xioner tried to defend the Elder, claiming that her master would definitely keep his promises and asking if Master Gu was questioning her master's morals. With a straight face, he confidently replied that she was being silly, for why would he ask the Elder to swear an oath if he didn't doubt his morals? This left them all speechless. Therefore, the Elder swore by his Tao heart that if he violated his promises, he would be struck to death by heavenly tribulation, his soul scattered, his primordial spirit perishing, and he would never be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation again. Angrily, he left. Afterward, young Master Gu called out to Xioner with a gleam in his eyes, alarming them. Yumingkong tried to protect Xioner, but she insisted there was no need and told her brother to let them settle all their grievances that day. Master Gu questioned Xioner, asserting that even her master couldn't defeat him in a duel, and asked if she genuinely believed she stood a chance against him. She retorted that he couldn't know if she could beat him if they hadn't tried yet. As she charged toward her brother and leaped to attack from above, Master Gu dodged using the void. However, Xioner had anticipated this move and followed his trail to his next teleportation point, attacking with the blue flames of the three-talent sword. Her attack was blocked by Master Gu's finger as he chided her for being naive. He stated that she had just broken through the conferred Lord realm and already wanted to kill him, demonstrating that she didn't have a clear understanding of her own strength. He then broke her sword into pieces, leaving shock on her face. Master Gu continued, saying that she talked about wanting to kill him every day but failed even when given the opportunity. He compared her to reckless little children, adding that she had disappointed him greatly. Hearing this, Xioner questioned herself. Why was he disappointed? Wasn't he supposed to be happy because she failed to beat him and he easily surpassed her? What did he mean by encouraging her in cultivation just so she could kill him? As Master Gu pointed his finger towards her, he said he would go easy on her punishment that day. With a flick of his finger, she received damage to her forehead. He warned her that if this happened again, he would throw her into a latrine and confine her there for 3 to 5 years. He advised her to go back and keep practicing, as he didn't have time to play children's petty revenge games with her. Frustrated, Xioner stood up and shouted that if he had tried so hard to embarrass her just so she would kill him, she would do just that. He advised her to make such a statement when she had the ability to actually do it. Suddenly, a surge of aura came from behind, prompting him to look back and see what it was. It turned out Xioner had activated her trump card, a blade piercing the skies, shocking the onlookers. Even the Great Elder could see it from afar, recognizing the old monster's sword intent, and wondering how Xioner had obtained such a thing. It appeared that Master Gu wouldn't walk away unscathed that day. As Xioner used her soul-shattering slash, Yumingkong shouted for her to stop. Regaining her senses, Xioner yelled at her brother to get out of the way. Master Gu, realizing the extent of Xioner's hidden power, chose to directly receive her strike, saying that it would count as payback for her pain. Concern filled their eyes as Master Gu remained motionless, the attack cleaving the land and sky in half. Xioner doubted herself, filled with questions. Why didn't he dodge? She had even cut back on the power of her slash. Did he actually want her to kill him? She almost succeeded. Had she misunderstood him all along? Yuumingkong rushed to her fiancé, worried and scolding him for his overconfidence. She told him that even if this was an act, what if Xioner hadn't held back at the last moment? That slash could have been the end of him. He responded that he simply wanted to repay her a little for all the years of suffering she had endured, surprising both Yuumingkong and Xioner. Yuumingkong continued to scold him, while the Great Elder acknowledged Master Gu's unparalleled ruthlessness, admitting that he had underestimated him. The following day, everyone was abuzz with talk about Master Gu. He had been named the heir of the Taoist Immortal Palace and had been severely injured by his sister, Gu Xioner. Meanwhile, Master Gu was in his room, tending to his wounds and reflecting on the situation. He thought to himself that it was no surprise the trump card of the fated saintess had such destructive power. However, he couldn't let his wounds heal too quickly, or his act wouldn't be convincing. This injury was a necessary part of his plan to earn Xioner's complete trust. Ultimately, she would be the one to remove the Dao bone, setting the final step of his plan in motion. As he changed his clothes, Master Gu mused about Xioner's actions. Despite facing her greatest enemy, she had held back. He thought of her as a naive girl, easily manipulated and unable to escape his control. Recently, it seemed that Yuumingkong and Xioner had joined forces, which likely meant they had reached some kind of understanding. Yuumingkong, possessing memories of her past life, knew about Xioner's fate and had likely sought an ally to confront him. This strategy was consistent with her usual approach. Just then, Yuumingkong knocked on the door to meet Master Gu. Upon entering, she inquired about his well-being. To his surprise, she seemed genuinely concerned for him. He playfully pretended to be in pain, and she handed him some pills to aid his recovery. When he asked her when she started caring about him so much, she replied that she had always cared. It was just that he had never paid enough attention to notice. As they talked, she informed him that the Heavenly Road would open in a few days, and many talented young individuals from various backgrounds were already forming secret alliances. She suggested that he take a walk down the peak when he had the time. Master Gu considered her words, acknowledging the potential threat but confident in his ability to handle it. He needed to create an opportunity for Xioner to accidentally discover his true secret. Meanwhile, others were discussing recent events, including Master Gu's injury and the fact that Yiling had fought to a draw with the reincarnation of an ancient emperor, Yilangshan. They speculated that Yiling might even challenge the young master of the Gu family. Although Yiling had been in the spotlight lately, it wasn't clear whether he could stand up to Master Gu. In another conversation, Langshan expressed surprise that he had been dragged into the matter with Yiling. Master Gu dismissed the issue as insignificant, claiming that Yiling was like a little grasshopper that could be easily stomped to death. Langshan admitted that he had initially underestimated Yiling, which had led to a draw and fueled rumors of a challenge. Master Gu speculated that Yiling might have some strong support or even an inheritance to explain his bold behavior. Langshan agreed, adding that when he had fought Yiling, his attacks had been unusual and he had been able to counter Langshan's mystic assaults. Master Gu suggested that both he and Langshan had similar suspicions about Yiling. His daring actions were likely due to a powerful figure backing him. Langshan was taken aback to hear that Master Gu also believed Yiling had obtained some sort of inheritance. Meanwhile, Yuumingkong wondered about her fiancé's intentions and whether he planned to reveal that Yiling had received the ancient Heavenly Emperor of Reincarnation's inheritance. Master Gu mentioned that he had heard of many outstanding disciples from various heritages disappearing or having their cores stolen. At this point, Yuumingkong realized that Master Gu intended to create the same disaster as in his previous life and shift the blame for being the inheritor of demonic arts onto someone else, with Yiling as the scapegoat. Yuumingkong looked extremely mad as she thought of the past. She clenched her hands together to suppress her rage. Master Gu noticed her actions and smiled when he realized that Yuumingkong had finally realized his intentions. He reached out to touch Yuumingkong's hands, which surprised her. He acted concerned and asked her what was wrong and if she was feeling unwell. Yilangshan placed his fist over his mouth as he told Master Gu that his relationship with Yuumingkong was enviable, while Yi Liu Lai, behind her, was crossing her arms and chewing on her hair to suppress her annoyance. Master Gu immediately apologized to Yilangshan for bearing witness to the scene that just happened and said that the recent disappearance of cultivators frightened Yuumingkong, for which she shyly apologized as well. Yilangshan looked deep in thought as he told them that not many people noticed the disappearances when they first began. But after the number began to increase continuously, cultivators started to take note of the matter and have kept everyone on edge. This was particularly because the cultivators who disappeared were not at a high cultivation realm. Yilu Lai's eyes widened, and her iris turned purple, a sign that she was under demonic manipulation. She interjected in the conversation, agreeing with her brother and adding that there was an even stranger event where someone dug out various Taoist cemeteries and robbed the ancient corpses within them. Master Gu placed his hands on his chin to appear as though he was deep in thought. He agreed with what Yilu Lai just said and suggested that these events had something to do with the taboo inheritance that was destroyed by many Dao cultivators long ago. With a surprised look on his face, Yi Langshan confirmed with him if what he meant was that the taboo inheritance had reappeared. Master Gu responded that it was possible, as he had heard that cultivators who practiced such forbidden inheritance consume the remnant souls of corpses to cultivate, which seemed to be in conjunction with the recent events. Yi Langshan paused for a moment to think, then asked Master Gu if Yiling's sudden rise to power had something to do with those events. Master Gu smiled inwardly, as he had been waiting for Yi Langshan to say those words. But he maintained his composure on the outside as he told Yi Langshan that he had done a thorough investigation on Yiling, and that he was born a talentless cultivator in a collateral branch of the Yi family. He had no background or resources, so it was suspicious that his cultivation realm had increased so much in such a short period of time. Yi Langshan swiftly stood up and exclaimed that the current matters were of great importance, so he must leave and report them to the elders. While he called on Yilu Lai so they could leave, Yi Langshan cupped his fist to Master Gu as he bid his farewell and told him that he would be seeing him again once the path to the heavens was opened. Master Gu responded by giving his farewell too and telling him that he wouldn't be seeing him out. Yi Langshan went to the door and made his way out while Yilu Lai lagged behind him, looking back at Master Gu with a sad expression on her face. As soon as they closed the door behind them, Yu Mingkong immediately told Master Gu that his methods were terrifying. Master Gu smiled smugly at her and asked her what was terrifying about his methods when he was helping her by doing them. He added that Yiling had to die either way, and it just so happened that it was easier to kill him this way. Yu Mingkong looked at him suspiciously and told him that she hoped what he was saying was true. Master Gu turned his back to her and looked out the window. The space beside him started to warp as he called for Elder Ming and ordered him to find a nearby place to rest for the night. Elder Ming cupped his fist and agreed to his command. Yu Mingkong was surprised that they were not returning. Master Gu smiled sinisterly and told her that he needed to make a breakthrough in his cultivation and watch the show. Meanwhile, at a residence, Yu Ling was politely thanking Bai Lai for all the cultivation resources he had given him. His cultivation would have never increased so much without his help. Bai Lai just laughed and told him that there was no need to be polite between them as they were brothers. Yu Ling and Bai Lai were drinking at a round table with two other men while a huge lobster was already drunk and sitting at the back of the room. Yulin brought up that he had heard about Yin Mei offending Master Gu for him and praised her, saying that there were no other disciples of the immortal Taoist palace that would do such a thing. The other man with red hair added that there were not many women in the world who had come as far as her and Bai Lai was lucky to have her. Bai Lai's face was already beet red as he laughed and proudly accepted the compliments for his woman. He then proceeded to inform them that Yin Mei coincidentally had the time to leave the immortal Taoist palace, so he asked her to join them, and then he asked if anyone had an issue with it. Yuling looked extremely excited and said that he could never have an issue with it as he heard that she was breathtakingly beautiful. Bai Lai glared at him upon hearing those words. Yuling cleared his throat and immediately changed the topic back to Master Gu. He told Bai Lai that there was no need for him to worry about him, as Master Gu's cultivation realm was only a little higher than his. Once he broke through to the intermediate stage of the sacred sovereign realm, nobody in their generation would be able to rival him. The other guy with horns laughed and agreed. Meanwhile, the huge lobster was still chugging alcohol and drunkenly talking about Master Gu being undeserving of his reputation, and how he was not scared of him. Bai Lai pumped his fist in front of him and said that his White Tiger clan was no weaker than the immortal Gu family, so he was not afraid of Master Gu in the least. He even added that strong cultivators like him would not be defeated over little losses. He then could not help but wonder and asked Yiling why he would challenge Master Gu, to which Yiling confidently answered that Bai Lai's enemies were naturally his enemies as well. Thinking of Yu Mingkong, Yiling smiled sinisterly and confirmed with them if that woman was Master Gu's fiancée. Bai Lai looked serious and alarmed as he asked Yiling if he wanted Yu Mingkong, the fourth princess of the celestial Wushuang dynasty. Yulin nonchalantly waved away Bai Lai's concern and asked if anyone wouldn't want her. Then he said that if he had the chance, he would pursue her. But then his expression quickly changed, and his face twisted into anger as he remembered that Yu Mingkong had tried to murder him a while back, so he wouldn't let her off so easily. He then smiled sinisterly as he said that he would have a go at her fiancé first, Master Gu. Yin Mei suddenly burst through the door and called for Bai Lai. Bai Lai's face lit up, and he was extremely happy when he saw her. Yiling turned to look at her, and his face was filled with surprise. He immediately stood up and greeted her, calling her sister-in-law. He told her that she had come at the right time as Bai Lai was just talking about her. He offered her a seat and offered to pour her a glass. Bai Lai gestured to the seat beside him and told Yin Mei to sit there. The two other men chorused as they gave her compliments, saying that she was really gorgeous. Meanwhile, Yin Mei apologized that she had kept them all waiting and explained that a lot of things happened at the Immortal Taoist Palace, because it was just announced that Master Gu would be the true heir to the palace, and his initiation ceremony was approaching very soon. Yin Mei turned to look at Bai Lai, and with a downhearted look on her face, she told him that if it weren't for the fact that she left the palace that day, she wouldn't have had the opportunity to see him. Bai Lai was furious, and he cursed Master Gu as he slammed his fist on the table while Yin Mei tried to console him, saying that she was fine. Yiling interjected with their conversation and proudly asked Yin Mei if she had heard about his upcoming duel with Master Gu. He assured Yin Mei that nobody would be able to lay a hand on her as long as he was there. Yin Mei smiled brightly as she told Yiling that she had heard quite a few rumors. She said that he not only fought against the reincarnation of an ancient emperor, Yi Langshan, but even challenged Master Gu to a duel. Yiling was flattered by her words, and he laughed, proudly saying that although Master Gu was extremely strong, he was not afraid of him like everyone else was. Bai Lai was giving Yin Mei the side eye as she continued to laugh and praise Yiling for being reliable. Both Bai Lai and Yin Mei were surprised when Yiling suddenly stood up to get a glass. He told them that it was rare to see everyone gathered, so he offered for everyone to drink a glass together, while complimenting her beauty and telling her that he could now understand why Bai Lai was thinking of her day and night. Yiling gave the glass to Yin Mei, who readily accepted it and thanked him. Yin Mei closed her eyes and drank from the glass without hesitation. Yiling told her that it was rare to see someone as straightforward as her, then held her hand that was holding the glass and offered to fill it up for another drink. Yin Mei pulled her hand close to her face full of hesitation as she turned to call out and look at Bai Lai beside her, who was now glaring daggers at Yiling. Yiling was surprised at Bai Lai's reaction, while the two other men knowingly stared at each other. Yiling backed off and laughed, saying that it was getting late and he must be drunk, so he wouldn't be bothering them anymore. The two other men cupped their fists to Bai Lai and bid their farewell too, adding that they would meet again once there was news about Master Gu, to which Bai Lai waved them off and bid everyone good night. Yiling opened the door to see themselves out while being followed by the two men who were carrying the huge drunk lobster in their arms and who was drunkenly talking about Master Gu having a taste of his strong claws. Without looking back, Yiling glared at Bai Lai and thought that he was being too selfish when he and Yin Mei did not even exchange more than 2 sentences. As soon as the doors closed, Bai Lai immediately turned to call out and look at Yin Mei, his eyes filled with worry. Yin Mei sighed, and Bai Lai could not say another word when she placed her finger over his lips while she warned him that Yiling was not a good person and he should stay away from him. Yin Mei stared into space, her eyes filled with worry, as she told Bai Lai to never trust Yiling. Bai Lai looked surprised and asked Yin Mei why she would say such a thing. Yin Mei looked at Bai Lai with concern and told him that she was not trying to ruin the relationship between the two of them. From the very first time they met, Yiling was staring intently at her. As she held her hand close to her chest and spoke with an uneasy tone, she told him that when Yiling made a toast just now, he kept staring at her chest. If Yiling did not respect her, she did not think that he respected Bai Lai either. Bai Lai's eyes filled with rage as he recalled the perverted look on Yiling's face earlier while making a toast. He slammed his fist on the table while Yin Mei held his hands and consoled him, saying she knew it was not his intention to befriend someone like that. She did not alert him earlier to what had happened because she did not want to be portrayed as someone purposely trying to cause a rift between them. She knew that he currently needed a lot of people to help him, so she didn't mind suffering a little for him. Bai Lai was still mad and said that he knew what kind of person Yiling was, but he could not believe that he would disregard him and planned to put his hands on Yin Mei. He comforted her and assured her that he would not spare Yiling easily for what he had done that night. Yin Mei stood up and told Bai Lai that it was getting late, so she would be heading out first, which made Bai Lai worry again. He asked her if she still had to return to the sect when it was so dark out. Yin Mei was already by the door, so she turned to look at Bai Lai and told him that she would not be returning to the sect tonight. She had a small house in the city in which she would stay for the night. She blushed as she told Bai Lai that her house was just 300 yards east of where they were. Bai Lai was surprised when he heard what Yin Mei said. He blushed as he wondered if she was secretly telling him to look for her later. Yin Mei headed out, and the doors closed behind her, leaving Bai Lai inside. While Yin Mei was still heading out of the residence, Bai Lai's yell commanding the guards to capture Yiling could be heard. Someone suggested to Bai Lai that he should go with the guards as Yiling was someone who had a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Upon hearing those words, Yin Mei looked satisfied and smiled sinisterly. Meanwhile, at an outdoor pavilion, Master Gu had his back turned towards Yu Mingkong, who was sitting at the round table. He was smiling as he looked at the rewards the system had given him for completing the random side quest regarding the Fortune's Chosen's relationship. In his mind, he was mocking Bai Lai and Yiling for having all that talk about being brothers but not resisting a little seduction. Master Gu started to head out and told Yu Mingkong that he was going to take a walk. If there was nothing else important, she could just wait for him right there. Yu Mingkong observed him intently and wondered if he was finally planning to make a move on Yiling. She immediately realized that Yiling had uncountable life-saving artifacts as the heir to the ancient reincarnation talisman, so Master Gu would not be able to kill him without revealing his secret to everyone. Yu Mingkong stared at the Xianqi in front of her and thought that Master Gu could be using Bai Lai. It was expected of someone like him to always manipulate people to achieve his goals. The moon was shining brightly above Yiling, who was casually walking down the street. He was talking to his talisman and telling the old man that Bai Lai was being a little too stingy. Yiling thought Bai Lai got upset when he simply talked a little more with Yin Mei. The old man responded by saying that Yiling was the only person he knew who would talk about taking other people's wives so naturally. If he didn't restrain himself, he would be in trouble again due to his appetite for women, like last time. Yiling disregarded the old man's warning and said that he would not let things that happened that day go easily. Yiling was suddenly alarmed when he felt someone's presence and asked who was there. It was Master Gu, who gave Yiling a mocking smile while he had his back turned towards him. He was standing atop the Peifeng. Master Gu bid his farewell to Yiling, telling him that he was not bad, and that they would meet again soon. Then he entered through the warp in space while Yiling hysterically asked who he was again. Yiling felt uneasy and was sweating. Even though he thought that the guy was not that strong, he was bothered by his eerie presence, and it felt suffocating. Suddenly, someone sinister who was already ready to lunge and attack appeared at the warp in space behind Yiling. The ground was destroyed by the man's attack. Yiling leapt backward and luckily avoided the attack. The old man and his talisman told him that he needed to escape as the man seemed like he was there to assassinate him. They could not afford to cause too much commotion since they were in the area that the Taoist Immortal Palace was in charge of. Yiling hurriedly ran away from the scene while cursing and wondering who the man was that attacked him. The man just stood there, holding his weapon, and watched Yiling run away. The man was Elder Ming, and he was wondering what his young master was really thinking when he instructed him not to force Yiling into a corner too much. He thought that Master Gu must have known that he wouldn't be able to kill him. Meanwhile, Bai Lai was expectant and said that Yin Mei must be anxiously waiting for him. He pushed the doors of Yin Mei's residence open and entered. He immediately saw Yin Mei when he entered. Her back was turned towards him, and he was delighted to see her waiting for him, sitting on a round table outside while warming up the wine. Without turning around, Yin Mei told him how her master was right, that he would come. Bai Lai was taken aback by what Yin Mei had said because he thought that she was waiting for him. Then he wondered about the master she was talking about. While Bai Lai looked confused and heartbroken, Master Gu arrived and passed over his head while consoling him. He said that he did not hear Yin Mei wrongly as she was always waiting for him. Master Gu expressed his delight that the wine was still warm while he landed beside Yin Mei, who immediately bowed and greeted him. Bai Lai could not believe what he was seeing, and he was lost for words. As if he were mocking Bai Lai, Master Gu turned to look at him and smiled. He asked him what he was waiting for and if he was not going to have a drink of the warm wine his fiancée had prepared. Then he asked Yin Mei how she could just let her fiancé stand there and commanded her to pour some wine for him. Bai Lai's eyes were bloodshot due to anger as he asked Master Gu if he used Yin Mei to plot against him. Yin Mei placed a cup on the table and told Bai Lai that it was the wine that her master had bestowed upon him, so he should thank him for it. Meanwhile, Bai Lai was baffled as to why Yin Mei betrayed him when he had always treated her so well. Master Gu sat on one of the chairs, and while still having that mocking smile, he told Bai Lai that he never thought that he was such a dutiful man underneath his brawny appearance. He heard that Bai Lai had always wanted to kill him, so he asked him why he looked unhappy when Yin Mei had managed to create an opportunity for them to meet privately. A white tiger aura appeared behind Bai Lai as he furiously asked Master Gu if he had plotted all of it ahead of time and if he had forced Yin Mei to cause a rift between him and Yiling so that he would send his guards away and come to the place alone. With his eyes still bloodshot due to rage, he told Master Gu that he did not care what his goal was, but he would not let him get away with that so easily. As Master Gu was about to calmly take a sip from his cup of wine, he praised Bai Lai for being clever and then asked him if he ever needed to do something as low as forcing someone to obey him. Yin Mei gave him a side eye and told him to stop thinking so highly of himself as he was not even worth a fraction of her master's toes. Then she asked him how she could possibly have feelings for someone like him. Bai Lai was in such shock upon hearing what Yin Mei said that he could not form a coherent sentence. He was even more surprised when a barrier formed around him. Bai Lai sweated profusely as he asked Master Gu if he was planning on killing him, even though he was a direct descendant of the ancient White Tiger clan. Master Gu stood up and sarcastically asked Bai Lai if he thought he had come just to talk with him all night. He then confirmed that he was there to kill him and found it a bit pitiful that his clan wouldn't know who to take revenge on. Bai Lai released his golden tiger aura and asked Master Gu who he thought he was to threaten him like that. Master Gu found him annoying and threw the cup at him. It seemed like it was imbued with a dark aura. The cup shattered into pieces. The pieces propelled towards Bai Lai like meteors, and he used his golden tiger aura as a shield. Most of the cup pieces were deflected by the shield, but one of them managed to shatter through his defenses. Bai Lai was surprised as it pierced through the center of his chest. A purple flower suddenly grew out of his wound, and he looked extremely horrified when he looked down and saw it. Master Gu and Yin Mei watched as Bai Lai knelt on the ground and screamed in pain. While sweating and turning pale, Bai Lai realized that Master Gu's strength was far superior to that of a cultivator in the sacred sovereign realm and wondered how much he was hiding. With Yin Mei calmly standing behind him, Master Gu smiled and told Bai Lai that the Peerless Golden ability, an ability ranked 3rd in the upper realm, was wasted in his hands. Bai Lai cursed Master Gu and told him that he should not be underestimated as his body started to make cracking sounds and he started to transform. The flower on his chest was now big enough to cover it. Bai Lai transformed to look like a white tiger and told Master Gu to go to hell. He quickly lunged forward and used his move, the White Tiger Claw. Master Gu summoned the 8-Baron halberd without moving an inch, and he confidently smiled while calling Bai Lai useless. Bai Lai froze, and he did not know what was happening to him. All the while, Master Gu's eyes gleamed as he glared at Bai Lai. Cracks appeared on Master Gu's barrier as a whirlwind of dark aura wreaked havoc inside it. Bai Lai coughed up blood, and his clothes were turned to shreds as he was thrown by the dark aura up in the air. Master Gu grabbed him by the throat while Bai Lai's mouth was wide open in pain. Both of them were still in midair, and while Master Gu held the 8-Baron halberd on his right hand, the weakened Bai Lai dangled on the other. Master Gu mocked Bai Lai for struggling and not waiting patiently for his death, while Bai Lai wondered how Master Gu could be at the true god realm. The flower on Bai Lai's chest suddenly grew vines and wrapped around him as he was screaming in pain and telling Master Gu that he could not kill him. While being wrapped in the vines, Bai Lai was about to say something about his clan, but he was interrupted when he noticed one of the vines had bloomed, revealing a bottle inside it. Bai Lai screamed in pain and was shaking as the bottle started sucking his aura out of him. As soon as Bai Lai's body drooped, Master Gu dropped him to the ground in front of Yin Mei, who was surprised. Yin Mei looked up at the sky with fear in her eyes. Meanwhile, Master Gu held the 8-Baron halberd and spread his arms as he absorbed the aura he just got from Bai Lai, and the moon looked like it was shattered because of the crack in Master Gu's barrier. As the last of the remaining aura got absorbed into his body, Master Gu looked at it with delight. He was in awe of the delicious taste of the ability and its power that could be manipulated countless times. He immediately understood why it was ranked among the top 3 in the upper realm. The barrier crumbled and shattered as soon as Master Gu descended to the ground, where Yin Mei immediately congratulated him for obtaining the Peerless Golden ability and asked him how she should dispose of Bai Lai's corpse. While smiling, Master Gu told her not to carelessly destroy Bai Lai's corpse, as he would be of great use later, and ordered her to clean up the mess in the place, to which she readily complied. Later, Yin Mei was sitting again at the round table with her back towards the entrance when 3 shimmering lights were shooting in her direction. She immediately turned to see who had arrived. There were 3 people. One of them seemed like an elder from the ancient tiger clan who landed and paid respects to her while looking for their young master. In response, she told them that Bai Lai came to meet her but left her to wait for him alone as he would go and settle his debts with Yi Ling. Then she asked them if something was wrong. The elder expressed his understanding and said that he did not expect that their young master would provoke Yi Ling first, to which Yin Mei asked what happened, feigning concern. The elder looked at the ground as he told Yin Mei that Bai Lai sent him to capture Yi Ling. But when he went to the city, he only found some traces of battle, and Yi Ling had gone missing along with their young master. Yin Mei acted like she was worried when she heard that Yi Ling was missing, and then confirmed to the elder that Bai Lai should be fine since he was the young master of the White Tiger clan, so he must have many life-saving treasures. The elder looked downhearted as he told Yin Mei that Yi Ling's methods were too peculiar, and that he was afraid that their young master might have suffered a loss at his hands, while the 2 guards behind him were furious, saying that they knew Yi Ling was not a good person from the beginning, and that they wouldn't let him off easily if something really had happened to their young master. As the 3 men cupped their fists to Yin Mei, they said that the young master's safety was of utmost importance, so they had to take their leave. She requested that they inform her once they found Bai Lai. She clutched her hands into her chest as she told them that she was really worried about him. As the 3 men left, they told her not to worry as they would let their young master know as soon as they found him. Yin Mei smiled evilly as her master planned everything so meticulously, and predicted everything, so by the time they found Bai Lai, his corpse would have already grown cold. Meanwhile, Yu Mingkong was standing outside the pavilion, staring into space. Suddenly, 2 hands were about to grab her from behind without her knowledge. It was Master Gu, who smiled brightly while asking her if she was still waiting for him. But instead of answering his question, she told him that the smell of Vixen was all over him and asked him where he had gone. Master Gu acted surprised, and he sniffed himself while telling Yu Mingkong that he was touched that she knew about the smells on his body so well. He smiled confidently and told her that he did not do anything to make her jealous, but she reminded him never to reveal his relationship with a certain woman. Yu Mingkong gracefully walked away as she told Master Gu that there was no need for him to test her as she would not reveal his secrets. With a sly smile on his face, he praised her for really understanding him. Master Gu was yawning behind her, and he was unaware that she was pouting as she walked away from him. She was thinking that she wouldn't let him have another woman by his side before she had her revenge, even if that woman was just one of his pawns. Meanwhile, at the ancient White Tiger clan palace, Bai Lai's father yelled and asked who dared to kill his son while holding a broken talisman in his hands. Veins were popping out of his face and his hands as he clutched the ornament, while he furiously commanded people to find the one who killed his son and announced that he would smash the bastard's bones into dust and tear their corpse into 1,000 pieces. In a forest, the 3 people who visited Yinmei were using Bai Lai's blood essence to find him, and they traced it back to the cave. The cave had a purple barrier at its entrance that they needed to destroy to get in. As they destroyed the barrier and entered the cave, one of the guards wondered if they were in a dungeon. Inside the cave were prison cells, and inside each prison cell were a lot of corpses, which made the elder wonder if what the Yi family said was true about the many cultivators that disappeared in the upper realm. One of the guards looked horrified, his eyes were wide open and bloodshot. He called on Elder Bai as he saw their young master's corpse sitting on the ground, completely shriveled as his essence and origin were thoroughly devoured by someone else. Elder Bai exclaimed as he saw their young master with his own eyes and said that the situation had gone out of their control, so they must notify the clan of what had happened immediately. Elder Bai's veins were popping out of his forehead due to rage as he cursed the demonic cultivator Yi Ling, who dared to kill his young master, and he declared that his hatred would never be forgotten. In a room, Yi Ling was sitting on his bed, talking to the old man and his talisman, Elder Gui. He said that strange things had been happening recently, and he felt like someone was plotting against him. He also wondered about the man who attacked him last night and if he was related to the assassins. Then he tried to remember if he had offended anyone recently. As Yi Ling held on to the talisman, Elder Gui speculated that the person plotting against him could be Master Gu. Yi Ling looked annoyed and wondered why Master Gu would bother wasting his time doing such things if he really wanted to kill him. He stood up and approached his window and said that he must report what happened to Bai Lai first, as he needed to be prepared. Suddenly, an announcement was made in the skies, persuading the White Tiger clan to unite and find the murderer of their young master Bai Lai, Yi Ling. The announcement said that his vicious and evil actions had violated human ethics, so anyone who could capture him or provide clues of his whereabouts would be honored for thousands of years. Yi Ling looked extremely horrified as he immediately stepped to the side of the window so he would not be seen outside, and he could not understand the information he heard. That Bai Lai died, and he was the one who killed him. He then closed the windows and took a step back. He knew it was not possible and someone must have framed him, so he tried to ask for assurance from Elder Gui, who knew that he did not kill Bai Lai. But unfortunately, Elder Gui told him that it was useless even if he attempted to prove his innocence. Yi Ling looked agitated as he realized that they may not believe Elder Gui even if he attempted to prove his innocence, and he could not expose that he had the inheritance of the ancient heavenly emperor of reincarnation because he would never be forgiven, so he must not let them catch him. Yi Ling slammed his fist on the wall. He looked furious as he realized what a vicious plan he had fallen into, being placed in 2 dilemmas with just one move, and he suspected that it must have been the man who attacked him last night who was plotting against him. But they knew nothing of the man's identity, so Elder Gui advised that Yi Ling use the power of reincarnation to conceal his origin, so normal cultivators would not be able to find him, while Yi Ling looked desperate and said that that was the only thing he could do. Several days later, the Taoist Immortal Palace held the coronation ceremony for the next heir, and many people attended. The position of heir to the Taoist Immortal Palace was conferred upon the true disciple, Gu Changji. Master Gu kneeled and paid his respects in front of the elders and the palace master. The palace master told him that he was now the heir to their Taoist Immortal Palace, so he must guide his juniors well and set a good example for them. Master Gu stole a glance at the people behind him and smiled as the palace master continued to say that Master Gu's presence in the palace brings him relief when he thinks of the opening of the path to the heavens. Some people in the crowd did not look happy, while most of them cheered as Master Gu assured the palace master that he wouldn't let anyone embarrass his fellow disciples of the Immortal Palace. The palace master was pleased with what Master Gu said, and he ordered a lady to give the immortal phoenix piercer to him while the palace master explained that the weapon belonged to an ancestor of the Taoist Immortal Palace. Once it had been refined with Master Gu's spiritual key, cultivators below the sacred realm would be unable to come near him, but he must not use it before reaching the true God realm. Master Gu looked like he was uninterested when he saw the immortal phoenix piercer that was offered to him, but he was amused on the inside. Most of the audience did not seem pleased that he was given the immortal phoenix piercer, and it seems like only Yi Langshan and Yi Liu Lai were happy with the announcement. Master Gu hovered above the audience and asked if anyone was discontent with the announcement and desired to have a spar with him. As the crowd looked up at Master Gu with awe, Gu Zioner looked at him with worry in her eyes. She observed his movements and thought that he had already recovered from what happened before. He asked the crowd one more time if anybody desired to have a spar with him as he landed back on the podium. Upon hearing their silence, he declared that he considered their silence as acceptance of his position as heir. Gu Zioner looked up at the podium expectantly. She expected him to give her a chance to challenge him and take the opportunity to embarrass her. As Master Gu smiled at the crowd that was showering him with praise for being a deserving heir, Gu Zioner wondered why he was ignoring her. She curled her hands into a fist as she silently questioned how Master Gu could act as if nothing had happened between them when she hadn't officially won against him, and how all of her effort, cultivation, and harbored hatred for so many years could be resolved with one mere strike. She looked furious as she thought about how Master Gu acted so high and lofty to treat her like a stranger and not even view her as an enemy. She was about to call out to him and make a scene when she was pushed to the side by Peng Fei from the Golden Winged Peng clan, who took a step forward and cupped his fist to Master Gu, congratulating and praising him for being the role model of their generation. Master Gu gave him a sly smile and told him that he was being too polite. Gu Zioner was then again pushed to the side when Kai Ling from the Vermilion Brid clan took a step forward with her arms crossed and asked Master Gu about his views on the recent issues surrounding the inheritor of the demonic arts. Everyone's attention was on them as Master Gu confidently answered that everyone knows that the inheritor should be captured and punished, so he questioned Kai Ling for asking him such a question. Kai Ling looked at him with contempt as she told him that the current reveal of the inheritor was too sloppy because, throughout the ages, the appearance of the inheritor of the demonic arts has been an event to shake the heavens and cause a stir amongst almost every cultivator. Master Gu looked amused when he heard Kai Ling's reasoning. She continued that the cultivation of Yiling was not even at the sacred sovereign realm, so she questioned how he was able to murder someone like Bai Lai. And Master Gu agreed with what she said, acting like he was deep in thought and saying that it simply does not make any sense. Yu Langshan stepped into the discussion and said that he had fought against Yiling before and that his techniques and spiritual ki are both extremely suspicious. To add to that, he also said that Yiling was still able to raise his cultivation extremely quickly even though he did not have many resources available. As he took a step forward, Yu Langshan added that the most important detail was the fact that Bai Lai's corpse was found with the talented disciples that disappeared, which made it difficult for him not to connect it with Yiling. So if he really was the one who committed such heinous actions, the Yi family would take responsibility. Upon hearing this, Kai Ling refuted that those were just mere speculations and they shouldn't wrongly accuse an innocent man. Upon hearing the word innocent, Peng Fei smiled and sarcastically asked Kai Ling if she was going to tell Bai Lai and the rest of the young cultivators who were unjustly killed by Yiling that he was innocent. While Master Gu just stood behind and observed them, Peng Fei looked at Kai Ling condescendingly and accused her of trying to defend Yiling because they knew each other. He heard that they once cultivated together in a secret realm, to which Kai Ling was taken aback and could not answer. Master Gu looked down on them with his evil knowing smile as he realized that Kai Ling and Yiling were acquainted, as he mentally added Kai Ling to the Xianqi board in front of Yiling. He thought that it looked like he would have no choice but to add another piece to his chessboard. Kai Ling, Peng Fei, Yilu Lai, and Yu Langshan were now at the center of the crowd's attention. The crowd started gossiping about how Kai Ling knew Yiling previously, and Kai Ling started to get concerned. Master Gu appeased the tension by saying that he didn't doubt that Kai Ling brought the matter up out of righteousness. Kai Ling was surprised when Master Gu went down into the crowd and convinced them to put the matter aside for the time being because if they really wronged an innocent man and they all wasted their efforts on capturing Yiling, then the true inheritor of the demonic arts could escape unscathed. Yu Langshan was about to protest, but Master Gu stopped him and told him that the demonic arts inheritor was someone with the power to bring calamity to the entire upper realm, so they could not afford to make a single mistake. As soon as Yu Langshan conceded and agreed with Master Gu to return and collect more evidence, the crowd praised him for being a blessing for the righteous, and said that it was no wonder he was close with Master Gu. Peng Fei cupped his fist to Master Gu and bid his farewell along with the crowd, to which Master Gu bid them farewell as well. Master Gu smiled knowingly as he glanced at Kai Ling, who was standing a few meters from him. He was confident that Yiling had already taken the blame for being the inheritor of the demonic arts, and he was glad that he had gained a valuable opportunity to gather resources and increase his cultivation. He had this sly look in his eyes as he looked forward to chance upon the corpses of immortals from the ancient immortal era on the ancient immortal continent, and the immortal spirit. Kai Ling stood beside him and thanked him for coming to her rescue earlier. She was shyly looking away as she asked Master Gu to show her around the Taoist Immortal Palace as it was her first time coming, and Master Gu gladly complied with her request. Someone was standing behind them from afar as he showed her the way and suggested that they should talk while they walked. It was Gu Zioner, who looked downhearted, trying to reach out to them. While they walked on the snowy flight of stairs, Kai Ling told Master Gu that after she heard what he said earlier, she could not help but wonder if he had a deep understanding of the inheritor of the demonic arts, to which Master Gu humbly responded that he had only learned of it through the scraps of some ancient books. It was his duty to learn of such things beforehand and inform the public of them. Kai Ling glanced at him and smiled brightly as she told him that he seemed to be quite warm-hearted. Kai Ling looked at Master Gu with awe as he stared ahead seriously, and humbled himself, saying that he would not consider himself warm-hearted as he simply does not wish for the universe to fall into turmoil and ages of endless war, so he could not just sit back and watch if the demonic arts cultivator had appeared. Master Gu furrowed his eyebrows and sighed as he recalled the death of Bai Lai. Although there were grudges between them, seeing Bai Lai end up that way saddened him. Kai Ling stared ahead as she admitted to Master Gu that she could not help but admire his righteous heart. As they continued to walk up the stairs, Master Gu confessed that he also suspected Yi Ling to be the inheritor of the demonic arts in the very beginning. But after he thought about it carefully, he realized that he was wrong because someone as attention-seeking as Yi Ling, who dared to challenge him, could not be the inheritor, and Kai Ling confirmed that Yi Ling's characteristics were quite similar to what he just described, which was why she could not believe that he was the inheritor of the demonic arts. Kai Ling proposed that if Master Gu was willing, he could help Yi Ling get rid of the false title, and she was excited to think that the two of them might be able to develop a friendship. Kai Ling smiled at him warmly and said that anyone could become friends with him as long as they were not idiots, since he was such a warm-hearted person. Master Gu glanced at her and acknowledged her cleverness for attempting to erase his suspicion of Yi Ling and have them become allies with just mere words, as he thought that Kai Ling had chosen the right person to help her get rid of Yi Ling's false title. He had this twisted expression of satisfaction on his face that he was trying to suppress as he thought about how he was too warm-hearted, righteous, and willing to help others no matter the cause. Master Gu was pulled back from his twisted thoughts when Kai Ling called out to him. He got back to the topic at hand, and he told Kai Ling that he assumed that she must know about Yi Ling's whereabouts since she trusted him so much. She told him that she didn't know, but she could find a way to contact him. Master Gu smiled evilly as he told her that it was a good thing. While Master Gu was smiling beside her, Kai Ling suddenly furrowed her eyebrows and confessed that she had been thinking if the real inheritor of the demonic arts was Yi Langshan. Master Gu looked amused as he glanced at her and asked her why she suspected Yi Langshan as the inheritor of the demonic arts and not him. Kai Ling told him that he was someone who was destined for a great future and was revered as a true immortal, so he wouldn't taint himself with demonic arts. While Yi Langshan, on the other hand, was just a mere ancient emperor. As the disparity between their statuses grew, it was not impossible for Yi Langshan to attempt to learn the demonic arts out of pure jealousy. Master Gu told her that if that was the case, then he should be more cautious. Master Gu and Kai Ling were laughing as they walked the streets. Suddenly, someone stood in front of them and blocked their way, and she recognized Kai Ling as the heir to the Vermilion Bird clan. Master Gu was surprised to see Yu Mingkong, while Kai Ling looked at her with awe and immediately confirmed with Master Gu that she was the Crown Princess Mingkong. All the while, Yu Mingkong stood there, glaring at them with her arms crossed. Master Gu closed his eyes and calmly requested Kai Ling not to take Yu Mingkong's actions to heart, as they had a few trifles lately, so she had been like that. With Yu Mingkong still standing ahead of them, Kai Ling cupped her fist toward him and bid her farewell, saying that she would come bother him another day as she wouldn't want his fiancé to misunderstand them. Master Gu bid his farewell to her as well. As soon as they turned their backs on each other to go their separate ways, Kai Ling's expression changed, as she thought she had done all she could to help Yi Ling and hoped that he would not get caught by others before they cleared his name. On the other hand, Master Gu was smiling smugly as he glanced at Kai Ling and thought of her as a little girl who was still too inexperienced at framing others. Yu Mingkong did not move from where she was standing and did not change her expression as Master Gu approached her and reached out to her asking if she was still angry at him. Yu Mingkong slapped his hand away from her. Master Gu was surprised while Yu Mingkong turned away from him and told him that if he didn't tell her who the vixen was last night, then he should not even think of touching her. Master Gu's expression suddenly changed into a cold, emotionless stare as he told Yu Mingkong that he would tell her what she was meant to know but that she should not ask about what she wasn't meant to know. He then took a step forward and asked her if she still did not suspect him after everything that had happened. With Master Gu staring evilly behind her, Yu Mingkong's eyes widened with fear as she tried to act like she did not know what he was talking about. But he immediately caught on and told her that she was smart, so pretending to be confused was no use. Yu Mingkong's sweat was dripping from her face as she thought that Master Gu suspected that she knew too much and was planning on killing her. Yu Mingkong immediately summoned a hidden dagger in her hands. She nervously observed Master Gu's movements as he turned his back towards her and said that he was liking her more and more because she was beautiful, obedient, sensible, and powerful, which simply makes her the perfect wife. Yu Mingkong's eyes widened, and she furrowed her eyebrows in confusion as she asked what Master Gu was talking about, saying that she was the perfect wife. Master Gu summoned a purple sphere in his hand and waved it off in the air as he told Yu Mingkong that he was sure that she knew that Yi Ling was not the inheritor of the demonic arts, as she was aware that his true identity was the inheritor of the ancient heavenly emperor of reincarnation. Yu Mingkong was speechless for a moment as she gazed up at the purple light in the sky that Master Gu created. She managed to regain her composure, and then she closed her eyes as she confirmed that what Master Gu said was correct. And then she added that she also knew that he was the true inheritor of the demonic arts, while Master Gu, who was surrounded by his dark aura, gazed back at her with a devilish smile. Yu Mingkong stared at Master Gu, her eyes filled with determination as she braced herself and asked him if the day had finally come where he was finally planning on killing her. Yu Mingkong held the dagger that she had been hiding in her hands tightly as Master Gu laughed menacingly and faced her, saying that she should have confessed earlier instead of wasting her efforts by pretending not to know anything. Master Gu told her that if his identity as the inheritor of the demonic arts was revealed, then his life would be beyond redemption, so he would be spared from all the trouble if he killed her. Yu Mingkong stared at him intently and asked why he hadn't done so. But instead of answering her question, Master Gu threw her a question instead, asking if she really thought the rune dagger that she was holding could protect her. Yu Mingkong was startled when Master Gu's dark aura started to surge towards her. She cursed as she dropped the dagger when Master Gu caught her off guard and suddenly grabbed her wrist. Master Gu was so fast that she did not have any time to react, and all she could do was stare at him, who was giving off an evil aura. As she continued to stare at him, she remembered Master Gu's expression when he was about to kill her in their future. She closed her eyes and accepted her fate, thinking that, in the end, nothing had changed. Her dagger clattered as it fell and reached the ground. Yu Mingkong was extremely surprised when Master Gu embraced her in his arms and apologized for hiding his secret for so long. Her eyes were bulging out in disbelief as he confessed that he had been hiding the fact that he was the inheritor of the demonic arts for as long as he could remember because he was always scared that it would implicate her. But now that she knows the truth, his heart could finally be at rest. Master Gu hugged her tightly while she just stood there, frozen in place. Master Gu smirked as the system notified him that Yu Mingkong had changed her mentality towards him and that his fortune and fate values had increased, and he thought that girls really do like to be sweet-talked. Yu Mingkong pushed him away and asked if he was not afraid that she would expose his secret if he didn't kill her. Master Gu calmly smiled and admitted that he was afraid. But he could not bear to kill her, so if she decides to expose him, he will have no choice but to accept his misfortune and blame himself for marrying a wife like her. Yu Mingkong blushed and told him that they were not married yet, while she was thinking about the difference between the present and the future where Master Gu was so resolute on killing her. While summoning the immortal phoenix piercer in his hands, Master Gu retorted that she would be his wife sooner or later, so she was already his. While he was showing off the immortal phoenix piercer to her, Master Gu told her that he wanted her to choose something from the treasures the old men had given him at the coronation ceremony earlier, but she wasn't there. Meanwhile, Yu Mingkong was surprised to see the weapon in the palm of his hands. Master Gu solemnly offered the weapon to her and said that if she wished to kill him, she would at least need to have a weapon of that caliber. Yu Mingkong held the weapon in her hands, and she was speechless as she looked at it with awe. She clutched her hands together along with the weapon as she thought about how it was becoming harder and harder for her to understand Master Gu. On the other hand, people of the White Tiger clan were holding out posters of Yiling while asking each of the people they came across if they had seen the man. Inside a building, Yiling was talking to Elder Gui. He was worried about the cultivators from the White Tiger clan looking for him every day, and that his identity would be revealed. He suggested that he dye his hair, but Elder Gui told him that there was no need for him to worry, as the mysterious ancient reincarnation talisman was not something they could see through easily. Yiling added that it was a pity that he could no longer use his handsome appearance to court girls, and Elder Gui scolded him for still thinking of girls in his situation. Yiling had changed the way his hair was tied and had a mole on his face. He was sitting and contemplating how it was too much of a coincidence for the demonic arts inheritor to appear at such a time, so he suspected that the inheritor had been cultivating near the Taoist Immortal Palace, or may even be a disciple. He also remembered Yu Mingkong's attempted assassination, and assumed that she must have known about his inheritance, as well as her fiancé, Master Gu. He looked annoyed as he stroked the hair that was coming out of his mole, and when he realized that the first person he had ruled out to be the demonic arts inheritor was now his greatest suspect, Master Gu. Elder Gui said that the matter was too terrifying, that the Taoist Immortal Palace failed to realize that their very own heir was the inheritor of the demonic arts, and that once this matter was revealed, it would shock the entire upper realm. Yiling started to pace in the room as he realized that Master Gu was related to every mishap he suffered, and he was a fool not to have noticed it earlier. Yiling was furious and declared that since Master Gu was that determined to ruin him, then he would play in his little game and fight him, as he did not fear him at all. Meanwhile, Elder Gui warned him not to tell anyone about it beforehand, as no one would believe him, and he hoped that their guess was wrong, as it was terrifying to have such a formidable enemy staring at them from the dark. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and asked if anyone was there, and Yiling happily called out for Kai Ling and told her to come in. Kai Ling came in and removed her cloak as she pointed out that she could hardly recognize his appearance, and Yiling told her that he had no choice as of the moment, or else he wouldn't even know how he died. Kai Ling placed her cloak on the table and consoled Yiling, saying that she was recently acquainted with someone powerful who believed that he was framed, so they would prove his innocence when the time came. Yiling excitedly asked her who the person was so he could thank them properly, but she said that she could not tell him right now, but gave him a clue that not many were his match in strength in the younger generation. While Yiling was glad about the news, Kailing was thinking that it was better if she kept Master Gu's identity for now, as Yiling had challenged him before. Yiling was ecstatic as he hugged Kailing tightly, saying that he didn't know how to thank her and that if the person could really prove his innocence, then he would repay them greatly in the future. Kailing winced and told Yiling that it was enough because he was hurting her. Meanwhile, Master Gu sneezed and wondered if someone was missing him. He was staring at his system screen when he realized that it was not easy to break through the heavenly god realm, as his cultivation had only advanced a little even after devouring so many resources that Yanmei had gathered. When he thought that the talismans he had exchanged were enough for the ancient immortal continent, he shuffled through the system's talents and techniques and was glad that he could finally put the Transcendence talent to use. He converted 3,000 fortune points and used the 30,000 fate points to transcend a bone in his body into a Dao bone. He reached out his hand into the system screen to purchase the Transcendence talent, and he thought that the system was incredible when he realized that he would be able to transcend every bone in his body as long as he had enough fate points. Master Gu's body was elevated, and his body glowed with a golden aura. He was then surrounded by a sphere that had a total inversion of color. Then the sphere expanded and reached outside the palace. Master Gu slowly opened his eyes as he thought about how he could already glimpse the laws of time, which was something only cultivators in the sacred realm could do. Master Gu smiled sinisterly, and his menacing aura surrounded him as he realized that his current strength was already at the sacred realm. While holding a weird fruit in his hands, Master Gu calmed down and remembered that it was about time that something began. He bit into the fruit he was holding as he gazed outside and saw a huge pillar of light arched over by a rainbow, and then he said that everything was right on time. 5 people were hovering around a huge crack in space. It looked beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was the elders of the Taoist Immortal Palace. They were guarding the entrance to the ancient immortal continent, and they were worried about all the cultivators from the younger generation that were participating. They could not figure out if it was a blessing or a curse. Suddenly, the great elder ordered them to notify all the disciples of the younger generation to assemble there in 3 days to prepare to enter the ancient immortal continent. Days after, the entrance to the ancient immortal continent has finally opened, and the older generation is disappointed that they won't be able to enter, and the elders within the continent are also forbidden from taking action as well. As the younger generation of cultivators pass through, an elder lady says that they can only depend on their capabilities to obtain the immortal spirit and be reborn, while an elder man is concerned about the resurfacing of the demonic arts inheritor. The great elder hovers in front of the entrance, reminding the younger generation that a barrier exists between the ancient immortal continent and the upper realm that cannot be crossed by the older generation of cultivators and the elders within the continent. So once they enter, their life and death will lie within their own hands. The crowd cheers, and hiding among them is Yiling. He stares intently ahead, thinking about how worthy the Taoist Immortal Palace is of its peerless reputation, as it is impossible for him to see its true strength. The crowd makes a fuss as soon as they see Master Gu arrive, while Yiling gets surprised and tensed up as his group lands behind him. Master Gu looks in his direction and smiles knowingly, making Yiling anxious and worried that his appearance was seen through by him. Elder Gui reassures him that the ancient heavenly emperor of reincarnation's inheritance is not something that can be easily seen through, so Yiling relaxes, but unbeknownst to him, Master Gu's system is showing him his 5,500 fortune points and is recognized. Kailing is all smiles as she approaches Master Gu and requests for him to take care of them during the journey to the ancient immortal continent, and Master Gu smiles and says that she is too polite. Yiling glares at them and reminds himself that he must warn Kailing not to be deceived by Master Gu's kindness, as it is very likely that he is the inheritor of the demonic arts. Yiling sees the downhearted Yanmei as he glances over his shoulders and thinks that she must be affected by Bailai's death, and that he must warn her as well, as she must not know that it was all Master Gu's doing. As soon as the great elder raises his hands and officially announces the opening of the entrance to the ancient immortal continent, the younger generations rush through the entrance, as they believe that the one who arrives first will be rewarded the most. As the cultivators around them are running towards the entrance, Yumingkong is just walking while giving Master Gu the side eye, and she passes through Master Gu and Yanmei, who are taking their time. Yumingkong is clearly annoyed as she goes through the entrance, and Master Gu, who notices that she is still angry at him, is already expecting that she would not come with him and that she would gain her opportunities. Gu's Ioner passes by them and does the same thing as Yumingkong did. Master Gu gets annoyed by what she does but tells himself to forget it as harvesting Yiling is most important. Master Gu instructs his companions that they would travel separately after entering, and if anything arises, they should immediately contact him with the summoning jade. Gu Zioner looks excited as she has already encountered an immortal spring as soon as she enters, and she is glad that the ancient immortal continent is the same as what was recorded in the ancient books. She punches her palm to pump herself up, and she sees it as the greatest opportunity for her to surpass Master Gu and get her revenge. Suddenly, 3 silhouettes appear, and one of them calls her a little girl, asking where she is from and why she is there alone. The person who is talking seems like a high-ranking official with his 2 guards, and he offers Gu Zioner to join them, saying that they would treat her well. Gu Zioner looks at him coldly and tells him to stay away from her as he has a foul smell. The man is enraged by what she said, and he immediately orders his guards to strip her, as he was going to have a bath with her in the spring. Gu Zioner summons her sword while she gets annoyed at what a mere sacred emperor realm is trying to do, and with her eyes glaring, she swiftly eliminates the 2 guards and lunges towards the man. The man is surprised at how fast Gu Zioner is. He barely has the time to summon his weapon. Just as he is able to materialize his weapon, Gu Zioner kicks his wrist, which makes him drop it. Gu Zioner launches herself into the air using the man's arm as her launch pad. She executes her final slash and lands behind the man gracefully. The man falls to the ground with a thud as she tells them that she doesn't have time to waste on someone like him. As she walks away, she extends her left arm, and the rings of the 3 men fly towards her as she says that she will be taking those storage rings as payments. The 7th princess, a lady with turquoise hair who has her own set of guards, finds the 3 men's bodies lying on the ground and calls them trash. But her mermaid-looking companion reminds her that no matter what, he is still her younger brother and a direct descendant of the Sea Monarch Palace. The 7th princess kneels on the ground and touches her brother's forehead as she tells her companion that there is no need for her to tell her what to do and that they didn't come all the way there just to be ridiculed. Her face contorts with anger as she realizes how foolish her brother was, who couldn't even finish off a little girl, and then she declares that once she catches the little girl will wish she were dead. Up in the sky, Peng Fei is flying with a mysterious man shrouded in black smoke. The mysterious man is amused at what just transpired below them when he recognizes Gu Zioner, while Peng Fei, who is carrying a man by grabbing his clothes, comments that the Sea Monarch Palace will not be easy to deal with, and they don't know if Master Gu will be willing to aid his sister. Meanwhile, 3 people are bowing down to Master Gu, who is sitting on a ruined set of stairs, and they are begging him to spare their lives. They also offer to lead the way. Suddenly, a lady arrives at the scene and informs Master Gu, who looks uninterested, that Gu Zioner has offended the cultivators of the Sea Monarch Palace and asks him if she should help her. Master Gu closes his eyes and calmly tells the lady that there is no need for her to do so as Gu Zioner won't die from that. He is confident as he thinks that Gu Zioner was taught by all those old men. Yin Mei bows down and cups her fist, informing him that they have to separate. To which he agrees, and then he reminds her that she must come into contact with Yiling as soon as possible. Yin Mei smiles evilly as she confidently tells him that with his plan in place, a mere Yiling would be simple. After which, Master Gu turns to the 3 people bowing down to him and tells them to get up. He smiles at them as he asks who will be responsible for leading the way, and the 2 of them smile and confidently point at the bulky man between them, as he is the most knowledgeable. Master Gu smiles evilly and says that there is no need to keep the 2 of them alive. The 3 of them look horrified as they realize their inevitable fate. The 8 Baron halberd falls from the sky and pierces a spherical barrier. It hits a purple creature that looks like half a man and half an insect and pins it to the ground. As dust disperses and mixes with a purple aura, a creature with golden horns is angry and is calling out the person who dared to cause trouble before the ancestors land. As the smoke starts to dissipate, an arm grabs the 8 Baron halberd's pole. Carrying the 8 Baron halberd is Master Gu, who is shrouded in his purple aura, and emitting an ominous atmosphere as he requests for the creatures to make way. His eyes are black, his iris is purple, and he smiles sinisterly as he politely asks them if he could also trouble them to die. Tombs were destroyed and opened on the ground. Above them, 4 corpses of the ancestors hovered as Master Gu absorbed the essence of the immortal spirits they had left behind. As he finished absorbing their essence, he looked disappointed and said that he had overestimated their abilities a little. He walked out of the catacombs and said that the entire continent would be in complete uproar when the immortal spirit finally appeared. While overlooking the continent and with the 8 Baron halberd piercing a creature on his left, he told himself that he must obtain a high-level spirit for himself before the uproar happens. He smiled maliciously as he thought that in order to obtain a high-level spirit, he needed to rely on the fortunes chosen. Meanwhile, Kai Ling and Yu Ling were fighting against a giant beast that was in the True God realm. They were with 3 more people, and Kai Ling was surprised when Yu Ling arrogantly offered to leave the beast to him as it was only in the True God realm. As Yu Ling charged towards the roaring beast, one of their companions questioned if he had gone crazy and said that there should be a time and place for everything, even if you wanted to show off, while their other companion said that there was no need for him to show off to such an extent just to impress the saintess. While lunging forward, Yu Ling smiled arrogantly and called them ignorant fools, telling them to open their eyes wide and watch him carefully. Suddenly, something pierced the beast at the back of its head. Yu Ling was surprised as the beast collapsed and damaged the ground because of its impact. Yu Mingkong landed on the beast's body along with her 2 guards. Kai Ling, along with her 2 other companions who recognized her as the heir of the celestial Wushang dynasty, looked up to Yu Mingkong with awe. And with that one blow, Kai Ling figured out that Yu Mingkong must have reached at least the intermediate stage of the sacred sovereign realm. On the other hand, Yi Ling was glaring at Yu Mingkong, his eyes full of contempt. While Yu Mingkong grabbed the core of the beast, she was thinking back about her previous life, where many tombs of the ancient immortal continent's original inhabitants were destroyed. And now, she has figured out that it must have been Master Gu that did it, as with his demonic arts, the continent was essentially a treasure trove for him. She was deep in thought as she thought of how high Master Gu's cultivation would be by the time they left the place if he did obtain an immortal spirit, and she hoped that he wouldn't be placing too much focus on her until Yi Ling was taken care of. Kai Ling and her companions bowed and cupped their fists toward Yu Mingkong as she thanked her for helping the Vermilion Bird tribe in their time of need. Yu Mingkong coldly looked down on them and said that it was just a coincidence, and then she questioned if Kai Ling was not hiding Yi Ling and her team. Yi Ling was frozen in place as Kai Ling's companions looked at each other with suspicion evident in their eyes, while Kai Ling smiled awkwardly and denied the speculation, saying that her tribe would never make such a mistake. Yu Mingkong did not say anything in response, and as soon as she left with her guards, Kai Ling grabbed the hem of Yi Ling's sleeve and asked if he was alright. Yi Ling did not say anything, he was just glaring and looking annoyed. Suddenly, a huge cloud of aura rose up in the air at a distance, which Yi Ling noticed and immediately recognized as Yin Mei's. Kai Ling was caught off guard when Yi Ling suddenly ran towards the direction of the aura. She almost made the mistake of calling him out by his name. One of Kai Ling's companions remarked that Yi Ling had been following them around ever since they arrived and now left without telling them anything, while the other one observed that Yi Ling was always acting suspiciously and had a strange martial art, so he suspected that he was the inheritor of the demonic arts that had been hiding. Kai Ling interrupted their discussion and told them that was enough. Kai Ling looked worried and sighed internally as Yi Ling messed up the plan they had for something completely irrelevant. She then compared Yi Ling's state of mind to that of Master Gu, whom she deemed far superior. Meanwhile, Yin Mei was fighting with a strange guy and seemed to be backed into a corner. Yin Mei looked mortified as the guy was about to grab her and said that he would search her body thoroughly for the spirit grass and she didn't want to hand them over. The guy was surprised when something smashed the ground between him and Yin Mei, which made him leap backwards, away from her. As the dust started to settle, Yin Mei looked surprised when Yi Ling appeared in front of her and reprimanded the guy for attacking a lady so cruelly. But then, Yin Mei's surprised expression changed into a sly smile. The guy backed off easily and said that since she had an accomplice from the very beginning, he would be the bigger person and let her have the spirit grass. Yin Mei cupped her fist toward the man and thanked him for helping her, and as she was about to introduce herself, Yi Ling interrupted her and called her sister-in-law. He dramatically redid his hair as he told her that it was him, Yi Ling. Yin Mei acted surprised and angry as to why Yi Ling was there, and Yi Ling, who was removing his mold disguise, nonchalantly told her that there was no need for her to worry as he was quite capable of disguising himself so no one would be able to find out his true identity. Still looking worried, she reminded him that a lot of cultivators were trying to hunt him down, and then she asked if he was not afraid that she would report him now that he had revealed himself so easily. Yi Ling grabbed her shoulders and told her that it made him truly happy that she was worried for him, but her safety was more important than anything else. Yi Ling looked into her eyes intently as he told her that she should know that he was framed, and that the reason he had entered the ancient immortal continent was to find something that would absolve him of the crime he was framed for. And in response, Yin Mei touched his arms, stared back into his eyes, and told him that she knows. With her eyes full of sincerity, she grabbed both his hands and told him that based on his character, there was no way he could harm them. Yi Ling blushed, and he was touched at how kind and understanding Yin Mei was towards him. Yi Ling then remembered to warn Yin Mei to beware of Master Gu, as he suspected that he was the one behind his framing. Yin Mei covered her mouth with her hand and acted like she was surprised and could not believe what she heard. Yi Ling grabbed Yin Mei's hands as he told her that she would understand more once everything had been resolved. And then he led the way to meet up with the Vermilion Bird's tribe and told her that it would be easier for them with more helpers. As soon as Yi Ling turned his back, Yin Mei's face turned serious as she thought about how his every move had already been predicted by her master beforehand. He smiled sinisterly as she thought how incredibly tough it was for Yi Ling, as he was not just helping her master shoulder the blame of being the inheritor of demonic arts, he was also unknowingly helping him search for various fortunes. On the other hand, a fight seemed to have occurred as an aura seal appeared in the sky, and beneath it, lightning was spreading midair without hitting the ground. Gu Zioner was surrounded by 3 enemies at the time, and as she held her arm that seemed to be injured, she was telling someone that she could not believe that they had gathered so many people just to hunt her down, and they even used a formation to trap her. The enemy with the skeleton broadsword told her to shut up and die as he lunged to attack Gu Zioner. Gu Zioner blocked the attack with her sword, but the enemy with a scythe swung their weapon behind her, and told her to face her judgment. Gu Zioner swiftly did a front flip and flipped over the enemy with the broadsword to avoid the scythe. But then, she was surprised when another enemy came from behind her again, dashing to punch her and threatening her that they would crush her bones. Guzainer was not able to dodge the attack this time, and although she managed to block the punch with her arms, the impact still pushed her down. As she was falling, Guzainer looked over to the two silhouettes to her left who were crossing their arms and seemed to be enjoying the show. This made Guzainer curse and think that there were too many people around and she could not get the upper hand due to the formation. Guzainer knew that they were trying to tire her out by having her fight all those people, and one of the silhouettes was the 7th princess, who looked pleased as she looked down on Guzainer. While Guzainer was still falling, her enemies lunged toward her to launch another coordinated attack. And at that moment, Guzainer blamed Master Gu for putting her in a bad mood earlier, causing her to kill those people and end up stirring the hornet's nest. As she saw the 3 attacks coming towards her, she bet that having her die there would be just what Master Gu wished for, as it would just give him less trouble. And thinking about it pissed Guzainer off and made her think that she could not let him get his way like that. Guzainer's bones shone blue, and electricity shrouded her arms as she got mad. As she delivered the punch, her eyes were blazing red, and she told her enemies to get lost already. Guzainer released a powerful blue wave from her fists, creating shockwave pulses and pushing the enemy away. The one with the broadsword managed to use his weapon to block Guzainer's wave, but the one with the scythe, who looked like a mermaid, got hit by the attack head-on. The person standing beside the 7th princess watched as the mermaid got damaged by the attack and lost its tail, and he was amused that Guzainer was not losing even though it was a battle of 1 versus 3, and concluded that she would be difficult to handle. All the while, Guzainer seemed to be getting tired and was out of breath. The 7th princess smiled confidently as she saw that Guzainer had almost spent all of her energy, and she commanded her people to keep taking turns attacking her, and told them that she would like to see how long Guzainer would be able to last. Guzainer knew that her spiritual Kai had been exhausted from the many rounds of battles. She needed to find a way to execute all of her opponents at once with the precious artifacts her masters had left her. So, she looked up at the 7th princess and provoked her, asking why she was not attacking with them. The creature beside the 7th princess was thrilled at how Guzainer not only had mysterious means, but also quite the silver tongue. He said that he loved deflowering little girls like her the most. Guzainer's 2 remaining opponents performed a simultaneous attack that she was able to block with her sword, but she was pushed back due to the power of the impact. And from above her, the creature standing beside the 7th princess joined in the barrage of attacks with his gigantic morning star. He told her that he would break her bones and have her serve the 7th princess with wine. Guzainer was able to block the attack, but it was evident that she was struggling to do so. She was harshly pushed back as her shield broke. The 3 of them got bloodthirsty eyes as they lunged forward for a simultaneous attack to kill her in one strike. Guzainer smiled victoriously as she raised her 2 fingers and thought that she had been waiting for that attack. The 7th princess' eyes widened when she realized what Guzainer was doing and immediately ordered her people to retreat. Guzainer's enemies were surprised as they saw her start to shine brightly in front of them. Guzainer extended her arm to launch her attack and told her enemies to have a taste of her 4th master's sword. The 3 of them lined up perfectly and got pierced by a huge golden sword. The sword even reached and pierced the array in the sky, and it started to crack. Guzainer looked up in the sky expectantly, as she would have a chance once the array was broken. She did not get to finish her sentence and was surprised to see the 7th princess lunging towards her with a trident in her hands, calling her a cunning little bitch for killing her people. Although exhausted, Guzainer was still able to block and parry the 7th princess' barrage of attacks. At one of the princess attacks, she managed to make Guzainer let go of her sword. She immediately took the chance to jump over her and kick her towards the ground. She told her that she was so young, yet she had already utilized such a devious and cruel method, so someone like her must not be left alive. Guzainer hit the ground with such a powerful impact that stones and dust flew out in all directions. The 7th princess then threw her trident, infused with her aura, towards Guzainer and told her to go to hell. A huge amount of water splashed when the trident hit the ground, but Guzainer was still able to dodge the attack by jumping backwards. Guzainer realized that the 7th princess was at the peak of the sacred sovereign realm and she needed to buy some time to recover as she didn't have enough spiritual Kai. So, she tried to drag out the fight by dragging out a conversation. She told the 7th princess that they were not the good people they thought they were, as all they did was abuse their power. The 7th princess laughed at what Guzainer said and told her that she must be abusing her power because her cultivation was higher than hers. Her trident glimmered as she told Guzainer that she must have heard that those who offend the royal monarch palace come to no good end. Guzainer confidently asked the 7th princess if she even knew who she was, but the 7th princess told her that she knew she was the disciple of the Taoist Immortal Palace's elder, but she didn't care as he couldn't come into the ancient immortal continent to save her even if she killed her. Guzainer was on edge, but she bluffed and told the 7th princess that her brother was Master Gu, who was currently in the ancient immortal continent, so if she killed her, he would certainly tear her apart and grind her bones into dust. But on the inside, she couldn't believe herself for using Master Gu's name at such a time, and she knew that it was wishful thinking for her, as the ancient immortal continent was vast. The seventh princess smiled confidently as she told Gu Zioner that she knew about the deep hatred between their siblings, so he wouldn't even care about her life or death. Gu Zioner put her hands on her hips and proudly told the seventh princess that she was nothing but an outsider, so she shouldn't be confident about their relationship. She even bragged that Master Gu himself said that he was the only one who could bully her. Gu Zioner made a gesture by pinching her index finger into her thumb, confidently saying that someone in the sacred sovereign realm was nothing more than a mere ant before him. But in her thoughts, she couldn't believe what she was saying. The seventh princess got provoked when she heard Gu Zioner compare her to an ant, and her expression contorted into anger. She immediately lunged to attack Gu Zioner without continuing the conversation. Gu Zioner was extremely surprised that the seventh princess got triggered so easily, but she was still able to dodge the attack by bending over backwards. She was now thinking of using her trump card because her spiritual Kai had not yet recovered enough. The seventh princess redirected the direction of her trident and did a slash attack that Gu Zioner still managed to dodge by pushing herself off the ground using her hands. While she was still flipping midair, the princess saw an opening and shifted her stance in a swift motion, giving Gu Zioner a side kick that made her groan. Gu Zioner was thrown to the ground, where she crashed with force, and her body was dragged along the ground. She attempted to stand up, but the seventh princess stepped on her chest with her heels, and her face contorted in pain. The seventh princess pointed her trident at Gu Zioner's throat and said that she was not afraid of Master Gu, so she would kill her first and witness the so-called reincarnation of a true immortal another day. Gu Zioner winced in pain and cursed at her thoughts as the seventh princess kept on stepping on her. The seventh princess smiled ominously as she said that she wanted to see what Master Gu would do to her. Suddenly, someone expressed surprise at what the seventh princess said, and her eyes widened in surprise as she felt someone's presence beside her. It was Master Gu, who stared into space with his cold and emotionless eyes. Master Gu glanced at her with the same cold expression and asked her what she thought he would do to her. The seventh princess' eyes widened, and she was frozen in place, unable to react, as Master Gu's hand suddenly appeared in front of her. Master Gu swatted her like a fly, and the intense power made her let go of her trident, and she spun into the air multiple times. Gu Zioner, who was still lying on the ground, could not believe her eyes that Master Gu had really come, and she contemplated whether it was a coincidence or if he had been watching her from the very beginning. Master Gu looked down on her with a sly smile on his face, and judging from his expression, she came to the conclusion that he had heard everything she had said earlier. Two of the seventh princess people were still alive, and they immediately rushed to their princess, who was now kneeling on the ground and admitting to Master Gu that he was very strong. But then she told him that he could not embarrass her. She glared at him as she touched her bruised cheeks and declared that she might not be weaker than him in a battle for life and death. Meanwhile, Master Gu was lending Gu Zioner a hand so she could stand up while asking her if she was alright. She was confused by the question, so she just made a sound to express that she was alright. Master Gu looked at her with his eyes half open, which seemed like he was trying to convey a message as he asked her what she meant by the sound she just made. Gu Zioner's eyes were wide open as soon as she realized what Master Gu was trying to do. Gu Zioner immediately clutched her chest dramatically and started to complain to Master Gu about her injuries being severe, her bones fractured, her organs displaced, and her being exhausted with no strength left. Then she told him that if he had not arrived in time, she would have died there. Master Gu glanced over at Gu Zioner and gave a subtle smile at her performance as she was sobbing and wiping off tears from her eyes, talking about how she would have died alone without anybody to collect her body. With such a sly expression on his face, he turned to the seventh princess and told her that since Gu Zioner's injuries were so severe, the royal monarch palace must have gone too far. The three of them, the seventh princess and her people, were furious at what Master Gu had just said and told him that he was spouting nonsense as it was Gu Zioner who killed her people. As soon as Master Gu started emitting a powerful, colorful aura, the seventh princess immediately questioned him for going so far as to abuse others with his powers. Master Gu confidently looked down at her, and then he used her words against her as he asked if he was abusing his power because his cultivation was higher than hers. As he continued to look down on her, he let out a sinister smile as he asked her how she wanted to die. The power of Master Gu's aura pushed back the seventh princess and her people. The three of them were furious, and the seventh princess threatened Master Gu, telling him not to go too far by insisting on lending a hand to Gu Zioner. With Gu Zioner still sitting on the ground, baffled behind him, Master Gu confronted the seventh princess and told her that her very own underlings were the ones who injured his sister. He couldn't understand the reasoning behind her threat against him lending a hand to Gu Zioner, which angered the seventh princess. Gu Zioner recognized that Master Gu's arrogance resembled that of the seventh princess when she was attempting to hunt her down. She was amused at how the tables had turned as she looked up to Master Gu with awe. She wondered why her heart felt at ease with Master Gu there. Gu Zioner blushed and pouted as she thought of her initial plan to use her revenge as an excuse to have Master Gu shoulder the blame and then leave him there alone. Master Gu smiled when he saw that the system gave him a notification that Gu Zioner's attitude towards him had changed. The seventh princess looked furious at Master Gu for being insistent and asked him how they should settle the matter of her brother's death at the hands of his sister. One of her people added that Gu Zioner even killed many of the royal monarch palace's warriors and asked him to account for that. Gu Zioner was now able to stand, and she immediately taunted one of the seventh princess's warriors and called him fatty. She even reminded him of what he said about breaking her bones and forcing her to serve wine to his master, and she asked why he was not following through with what he said. Master Gu looked at the purple guy with his cold, piercing gaze, and the guy immediately felt scared and began sweating profusely. As Master Gu took a step forward, he asked them how he should settle the situation. While still having that cold expression on his face, he then started to emit a smoke-like aura. The seventh princess was intimidated when she felt the aura but could not recognize what it was. A strong gust of wind blew towards her, and she had to protect her head with her arms and strengthen her stance so she wouldn't be blown away. While protecting herself, she suddenly felt something strange. She looked back and saw Master Gu's index finger glimmer with a golden light. Before she could even react, one of her people was lying on the ground with his body all dried up like soil. While Master Gu was absorbing a golden light coming out of his eyes and saying that he would settle the matter by having them all join the seventh princess's brother. The seventh princess was filled with terror, and her eyes widened as she could not believe how Master Gu could wield the power of the laws. The purple guy, who was already extremely terrified, called Master Gu a monster and ran away from him while he asked the seventh princess to save him. With his iris turned red, Master Gu gave him an ominous smile, and as the purple guy looked back while he was running away, seeing Master Gu's expression made him more terrified. Suddenly, Master Gu was gone from where he was standing, and the princess tried to reach out to him and told him to be careful. Master Gu was already standing in front of him with a cold, murderous gaze, and before the purple guy could turn to look in front of him, Master Gu raised his left hand and pushed him down to the ground, squishing his face in the process. The ground shook with the impact, and shockwaves vibrated through the air as the purple guy got pushed into the ground and looked like a turtle that hid back into its shell. The seventh princess was petrified. She couldn't move or say anything and just stared at the slowly dissipating smoke that was starting to reveal Master Gu. In front of him was the purple guy, dried up like a mound of rock, and the princess's eyes were bloodshot as she stared at the scene with terror and disbelief. Master Gu started to walk towards her and told her it was her turn, while she started to slowly back away as he took each step. She told him that he must not be in his best state after wielding the power of the laws, so she offered a discussion on behalf of the royal monarch palace's power. Master Gu confidently smiled as he simply ignored what she said and told her that if she had anything to say, she had to wait until she was in the underworld. The seventh princess was surprised when the huge lobster suddenly popped out of the trees and told her not to be afraid, as he would save her. The huge lobster confidently lunged to attack Master Gu from behind and told him to prepare. While he thought that he just came at the right time when Master Gu's condition was not at its peak. He thought that if he killed Master Gu, he would be able to win over the seventh princess's heart and obtain the palace master's recognition. But to everyone's surprise, he could not even lay a hand on Master Gu, who just swatted him like a fly. The seventh princess got mad and called Master Gu trash while summoning something. Master Gu looked amused and recognized that she was summoning a replica of the Qiyang furnace. As the summoned furnace grew larger, the seventh princess told Master Gu that even if it was a replica, it was still a treasure of her royal monarch palace, so it was enough to defeat him. But Master Gu just mockingly laughed at her. Master Gu calmly closed his eyes and called her a joke while he summoned a sword and levitated off the ground. He hovered in front of the seventh princess, with the sky behind him filled with endless swords. The seventh princess with her furnace looked miniature, as did Gu Zioner, who was standing on the ground and looking up to see their fight as they faced Master Gu. He spread his arms and called his move the Boundless Sword Strike God-Slaying Order, and created an entire sky that was covered with swords that looked like stars in the beautiful night sky. Terror filled the seventh princess's eyes, and she could not believe what she was seeing. Every sword in front of her contained the power of the laws. Meanwhile, Gu Zioner was frozen in place as she looked up at the sky with awe, wondering if it was Master Gu's true strength. Beyond the mountains, a golden, shining light could be seen, and from the light, countless numbers of swords came rushing forward and toppled down the peaks of the mountains. Each of the swords' powers was so formidable that the rocks that were toppled down from the mountains were reduced to dust. The seventh princess fell lifelessly onto the ground with the rocks as the swords that pierced through her body started to dissipate into golden light. Gu Zioner looked down at the lifeless seventh princess on the ground as she asked Master Gu why she was thrown at her feet. Master Gu told her that although the seventh princess was dead, the blood within her could still be used to strengthen herself, so he asked if she did not want it. Gu Zioner did not answer the question. She looked like she was deep in thought and was speechless for a moment. Then she decided to ask Master Gu why he was there. Master Gu looked away as he told her that it was merely a coincidence. Gu Zioner's demeanor suddenly changed as she put her hands on her waist and proudly told Master Gu that she would have survived even if he did not interfere, so he should not expect her to thank him. With a bored expression on his face, Master Gu retorted that Gu Zioner only called her brother when she was in trouble, so it seemed like she was due for another punishment. Master Gu turned his back on Gu Zioner and started to walk away. He told Gu Zioner that he was leaving as he was afraid that he would fail to control his anger and seal her somewhere for 500 years. Gu Zioner retorted and told him to stop acting so proud because one day she would defeat him. But Master Gu cut her off and told her that if she wants revenge, she needs to prove herself because if she continues to stay the same as she was in the past, she wouldn't be fit to follow him around. Gu Zioner was surprised, and her eyes widened when she was reminded of the past. At the Gu residence, Gu Zioner was clinging to Master Gu's legs and was crying her eyes out, saying that Gu Lei was bullying her again and stole her toy. Master Gu tried to push her off his legs and looked annoyed as he told her to get out and not disturb his cultivation. Master Gu looked at her with disgust and told her that she was crying about something so mundane and asked her if she thought that he would care about something like that. Suddenly, Master Gu was stepping on a kid who was on all fours. He asked the kid who gave him the guts to bully Gu Zioner and told him that if they bullied her again, he would burn them all in a furnace. On the other hand, Gu Zioner was enjoying kicking her other two bullies that were buried headfirst in the ground. The young Gu Zioner smiled so brightly and looked at her brother with admiration as she got her justice. In the present, Gu Zioner stared at Master Gu with eyes filled with nostalgia. She then clenched her hand into a fist and told Master Gu that she was no longer a kid. Master Gu glanced back at her and mockingly doubted what she just said. Gu Zioner looked grim as she told Master Gu that whether he was doing these things out of guilt or not, he could not conceal what happened in the past forever. She then glared at him with eyes full of determination and told him that she would find out what really happened and win against him fair and square. As Master Gu walked away from Gu Zioner, the system notified him that Gu Zioner's perception of him had changed, and as a result, his fortune and fate values had increased. Master Gu realized that Gu Zioner's view of him probably began to change subconsciously, despite her constantly saying that she would defeat him. As he recalled how he had taken the 7th Princess Origin Essence and given the leftovers to Gu Zioner, he observed that she had such a naive mind and heart that even the slightest amount of favor given to her was more than enough to cause her to lose herself. She probably wouldn't even realize if someone was attempting to sell her for their own profit. Master Gu let out an internal sigh as he thought of how Gu Zioner would probably end up running into lots of trouble if she didn't have an older brother like him looking after her all this while. The expression on his face was filled with satisfaction. After foraging around for a while, Master Gu's cultivation had naturally climbed up to the quasi-god realm. Now, even without his demonic energy, he could easily suppress all those young talents. All that was left to do was to know how his scapegoat, Yiling, was progressing with his treasure hunt. On the other hand, news quickly spread, and people started talking about Master Gu reaching the initial stage of the quasi-god realm. They also spoke about how his cultivation stage could kill off everyone at the Sea Monarch Palace, including the prideful 7th princess who was quickly taken out by a single attack from him. Yilu Lai and Yilangshan overheard the conversation. Yilu Lai seemed pleased at what she heard, while Yilangshan was a bit concerned about how Master Gu's growth was monstrous, and that there was no one left there that was strong enough to be his opponent aside from those that have royal blood and monsters that have been sealed away. Suddenly, something caught Yilangshan's attention. He crossed his arms and asked Yilu Lai why he felt like she was happy about the matter. Yilu Lai smiled awkwardly while scratching her temples and hesitantly denied his accusations. Meanwhile, multiple huge splashes of water were created at sea as Yu Mingkong fought with a red-haired lady with horns. The red-haired lady had this crazed look in her eyes as she was about to deliver her punch and told Yu Mingkong that she would see how long she could hide from her. A huge explosion followed by a huge wave was created by the force of that punch, and Yu Mingkong protected herself with her aura and flew away, distancing herself from the chaos. Yu Mingkong never thought that she would meet someone so powerful there. She then recalled from her past memories that her opponent was one of the people under Long Tang, who claimed that he was the image of the true dragon. She then looked back to the forest that was filled with bystanders and thought that there were too many people nearby, so it was not convenient for her to expose all the cards under her sleeve. While Yu Mingkong's attention was elsewhere, her opponent was already behind her, preparing for an attack while calling her an outsider and asking what she was looking at. Yu Mingkong looked annoyed, and her eyes glimmered as she turned towards the opponent, preparing to counter the attack. Their attacks clashed, creating a powerful shockwave that pushed away the waters below them. The animals in the forest started running as a huge wave of water started to surge through the forest, raging through the trees. While they talked about how powerful Yu Mingkong was, the waves almost reached the bystanders who were standing on the branches of huge trees. One of them asked who Yu Mingkong's opponent was, as they could not believe that she was at the quasi-god realm already, and speculated that she was from the Ancient Immortals clan. Someone else interjected that they thought the Ancient Immortals clan vanished years ago, as the Ancient Immortal Continent's land was just a portion of their original homeland. while another laughed at the mention of the ancient immortal clan and said that they were probably their ancestors' slaves. But the guy who looked like a scholar told them that the ancient immortals clan had long kept to themselves, and with the Ling Kai on the continent being considerably more dense and plentiful compared to theirs, it wouldn't be a surprise if their younger generation was considerably stronger than their current disciples. The women before them were a splendid example of that, and the kid beside him who was listening concluded that they should move more carefully in the future. Meanwhile, the lady who thought that the ancient immortal clan was their ancestors' slave was annoyed because of the embarrassment. At the same time, the red-haired lady acknowledged Yu Mingkong's strength and said that if she were at the same level as her, she doubted that she would be able to defeat her. The red-haired lady extended her hand and offered Yu Mingkong a chance to submit to the heir of their true blood dragon clan, Long Teng. She thought that he would appreciate a strong woman like her. Yu Mingkong looked repulsed as she confirmed that her earlier thought was correct. It was really Long Teng. She remembered Long Teng's demonic appearance, who broke the barrier of the ancient immortal continent and killed all of the talented immortals in the upper realm. But he soon disappeared as though he had never existed to begin with, and the people thought that he had offended someone powerful or disappeared after accidentally venturing into a forbidden place. As Yu Mingkong thought more about it, her face looked annoyed as she remembered Master Gu's arrogant face. She came to the conclusion that Long Teng's disappearance had something to do with his fiancée because he practiced the deity-devouring demon art, so he would not have let go of the opportunity to consume Long Teng's true dragon essence. Yu Mingkong smiled as she thought of a plan to use Master Gu's name to ward away Long Teng's subordinate, who was not worth exposing more of her abilities for. The red-haired lady noticed her change in expression and came to the conclusion that Yu Mingkong must have heard of her master's name. She told Yu Mingkong not to worry because with her looks and talents, she was sure that Long Teng would be willing to dual cultivate with her if she submitted to her proactively. The red-haired lady was confused when Yu Mingkong laughed and told her that she should pray that what she said does not reach her fiancé's ears. Yu Mingkong smiled confidently and told her opponent that she wouldn't be able to take her down. So rather than wasting their time with words, she should go back and remind Long Teng to be careful not to be beaten into a crawling bug by her fiancé, Master Gu. The red-haired lady got enraged with what Yu Mingkong said and was lost for words. But then she chose to turn her back and agree with Yu Mingkong. She told her that no woman that Long Teng wished for had escaped his claws, so she should better be prepared to take back Master Gu's corpse. While the red-haired lady flew away, Yu Mingkong smiled smugly as she thought that she was just one of Master Gu's prey. She hoped that she would still be able to laugh like she did when they finally met him. Yu Mingkong looked at her wooden talisman, and she was surprised by the information that Gu's Iner was rescued by Master Gu. She then looked skeptical, as she knew that Master Gu was not someone so kind to do something without gaining some kind of profit. But she was contemplating if Master Gu's motives towards Gu's Iner had changed in his current lifetime, or if he could simply be planning something sinister. She turned to fly away as she decided to just forget the matter. She would eventually find out why the Master Gu from her previous life was so different from the current one. And as for his attitude towards Gu's Iner, she would have to find a chance to ask Uncle Gu about the details. Meanwhile, a huge serpent was fighting with Yiling, and multiple parts of its body were hit by some kind of explosion. Yiling's expression looked eager as he used his move, Reincarnation Fist. The serpent's head slammed into the ground with such great force that its impact created a mess on the ground. Kai Ling's companions marveled at how strong Yiling was and how his cultivation had risen to the sacred sovereign realm, that he could already take down a monster that was at the quasi-god realm all by himself. As Yiling stood up on the serpent's head, one of Kai Ling's companions apologized to him for mocking him before, and as he told them that it was alright and not to worry about the matter, another one praised Yiling for being a role model of their generation for being kind, generous, and having unparalleled strength. Unbeknownst to them, Elder Gui was scolding Yiling to be more careful as he had yet to obtain the Heavenly Emperor's inheritance. Yiling replied to him in his mind, asking why the inheritance that the Heavenly Emperor of Reincarnation left behind for him would be in the sector where the commoners live. He was concerned that with the amount of strength he had, he would die immediately as soon as he went looking for them. As Yiling looked over the inhabited area, Elder Gui told him that the Heavenly Emperor could not place it somewhere where everyone could try to snatch it, and he was an immortal that presides over the laws of time during the ancient immortal times, so he must have planned ahead on the things that he wished to leave behind for his successor. When Elder Gui reprimanded him for not having the courage to find his inheritance as the Heavenly Emperor's successor, and told him to just go home and plant all those sweet potatoes, Yiling looked guilty but denied that he was not courageous enough. As Yiling looked at the people behind him, he thought that he didn't know what would happen in the ruins, so it seemed that he must bring them along with him. Kai Ling and Yin Mei climbed up to the serpent's head where Yiling was to check on him if something was wrong. As he was leading them from the very start, they asked him why they were not moving. Ling told them that he needed to go to the ruins ahead as there was an important piece of fortune for him there, and if they believed him, he would bring them all together with him. In a heartbeat, Yin-mei told Ling that she believed in him, which touched Ling. He was extremely glad and was blushing, while Ling on the side seemed to be jealous and annoyed at the situation. Ling blurted out that she was going with him too. Ling was so ecstatic that they were coming with him that he almost blurted out his true intentions. But he immediately caught himself and told them that there were a lot of fortunes to be found in those ruins, so there would be a chance that they would be able to obtain one for themselves if they followed him. All the while, Master Gu was meditating in the middle of the forest, and a purple aura was flowing towards him. He peacefully levitated and meditated as the purple aura enveloped him. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and smiled ominously as he found out that Ling's fortune had finally appeared. At the entrance of the ruins, as Ling told his companions that they wouldn't be far from their destination once they entered, one of them expressed concern that the place didn't seem safe. Ling told them not to worry and that he would help them conceal their presence. He rushed forward and led them, telling them that they couldn't afford to hesitate. When Ling was about to follow Ling's lead, one of her companions called out to her. Ling looked back, puzzled as to why she was called. Her companion told her that it was too dangerous. Even though Ling's cultivation was not weak, the ruin was something that even the natives had no idea about. There was a possibility that someone of much higher level of cultivation might be waiting and luring them inside. Ling seemed annoyed as she told him to wait outside so that they could turn tail and flee if something happened. Her companion stood his ground and told her that he felt Ling was hiding something from them. All this time, he had led them away from traps and steered them in this direction with a clear goal in mind. The guy was not able to finish talking to Ling as Ling interrupted them, asking what they were talking about, and told them to keep up. Ling turned to catch up to Ling and told her companion not to worry as she believed in Ling's character. He was definitely not the kind of person they thought he was. The guy was enraged at Ling, as he was certain that he had some kind of motive that he was not telling them, while his other companion sighed and tapped him on the shoulder, urging him to follow them. Meanwhile, Yin-mei was observing Ling, who was internally talking with Elder Gui. He asked Elder Gui if the natives who originally guarded the Heavenly Emperor's enlightenment platform would also be in the ruins. Elder Gui told him they should be there and warned him that too much time had passed. So he was afraid that things wouldn't go as easily if they went against Ling instead of immediately pledging themselves to him. Ling confidently smiled as he told Elder Gui not to blame him for being inconsiderate towards them if they were the ones to betray him first. All the while, the 5 natives inside the ruins were talking about the successor to the Emperor of Reincarnation that appeared. They were contemplating if the prophecy was true and that the person who came was there to take away the inheritance of the ancient Heavenly Emperor of Reincarnation. They thought that the slave mark on their tribe was just an ancient rumor, so they never thought that the prophecy would really manifest like that. An old lady with cat ears told the group that she had called all of them as their families had taken turns taking care of the Emperor of Reincarnation's enlightenment stone, Wu Jin. Now that they had to give it back, she was sure that none of them were happy with such a turn of events since they had been unable to unlock the Heavenly Emperor's abode that had lots of treasures and information inside. An old man calmly made the observation that the key to opening up the abode seemed to lie with the successor, while the one that looked like a minotaur was enraged and said that it was nonsense that someone would just come and take away the things they had originally had for a long time just because he was a successor. He said that only fools would agree to such a thing. Someone with a glowing mark on their hands calmed them down and told them not to panic. It was the old lady, and she told them that in accordance with the ancient agreement, all the youngsters that have entered from the outside world were at most in the quasi-god realm. Since they were all in agreement to guard the Emperor of Reincarnation's inheritance, she asked them what plans they had, but the Minotaur just blurted out that they should just kill the successor. The old lady looked resolute and told the group that since they made their decision, they should keep an eye on those outsiders closely. If there was anything strange, they should kill all of them and not let any of them go. Meanwhile, Ling and his companions traversed inside the ruins while he shrouded them with his aura to conceal their presence. Ling looked up at the rooftops that were swarming with natives, and he cursed internally, wondering why there were so many in the area. As Elder Gui told him that they might be there for him, Ling looked agitated as he thought that they had been found out already when barely any time had passed. Elder Gui comforted him and told him not to be pessimistic as they didn't know the details yet, so maybe it was a test given to him by the Heavenly Emperor. Upon hearing this, Ling got even more upset and slammed his fists on the wall while questioning why the Heavenly Emperor couldn't have just left some fortunes without making them work for it. All the while, Yin-mei was carefully observing Yuling's actions and speculated that the natives were really hunting for Yuling. Yuling's talisman shone as Elder Gui reprimanded him for being impatient and said that a test must have a way to pass it. He instructed Yuling to find the abode that the Heavenly Emperor of Reincarnation had left for him. Through the inheritance, there must be a method to tame the Enlightenment platform. He then said that once Yuling had the Enlightenment platform in his hands, no one, not even those natives, would be able to stop him. Yuling clutched the talisman in his hands as he thought of Master Gu and hoped that Elder Gui was right. He must get the inheritance to reveal that Master Gu was the true inheritor of the demonic arts. Suddenly, Yinmei grabbed Yuling's clothes as she pointed at the sky, asking him if the natives were there to capture them. Yinmei acted like she was downhearted when Kai Ling got furious with her actions and told her to stop spouting nonsense. The natives might just be trying to find something. Yuling nervously told Yinmei that the natives being around was just a coincidence. He told them not to worry as he would protect them all regardless of what happened. Yinmei held Yuling's arms close to her chest and told him that she believed that he was trustworthy. She gave him a bright smile, and Yuling smiled back at her while blushing and holding her hands that were wrapped in his arms. All the while, Kai Ling was glaring at them and cursing Yuling in her mind. Somewhere in the ruins, the lifeless bodies of two natives lay at an entrance. Master Gu came out of that entrance with more dead bodies of natives inside, one of which was even stuck in the ceiling. He was smiling as he looked at the system screen and was a bit surprised that it showed him that his true strength was already at the intermediate stage of the Divine King realm. He was also glad that the resources he had come to take had still been left intact at that old tomb, waiting for Yuling to infiltrate the place. He calmly looked at the horizon as he closed the system screen. He thought that he would no longer need to break through to the next step. If both his immortal and demonic cultivation developed too quickly, it would attract the attention of those old monsters. That would be bad for him. As he observed the natives scouring the area from the high ground, he wondered if they had realized something. It hadn't even been a day since Yuling infiltrated, and the entire ruin seemed to have been activated. But as he looked closely, he observed that the natives were still investigating. They have yet to find out where Yuling was, as they have been wandering around aimlessly. Master Gu decided that he should grab one to question. Right on cue, a native that resembled a cat landed in front of him. She declared that she would cut the successor into 8 big pieces if she managed to catch him. Master Gu was surprised, and it seemed like he could not believe his luck. Then he smiled sinisterly. He grabbed the native by her shoulder and greeted her. As the native looked behind her, she was surprised to see Master Gu emitting such an ominous aura, and he told her not to make any noise, or she would die. The space around them warped, and they were sucked into a tiny hole in the space. The native was surprised as she fell into a place of pure white nothingness. Suddenly, she was screaming as she fell from the sky. She was sweating profusely as she got suspended in place, and the horror in her eyes was evident. It was Master Gu who prevented her from falling down by grabbing her upper garment, and he welcomed her into his world. Master Gu tossed her, but instead of falling down like earlier, she seemed to hit an invisible floor in the sky. Her eyes were filled with surprise as she looked at what was below her. She marveled at the upside-down scenery in front of her and recognized that she was in an inner world space. This made her question who Master Gu was and what he was trying to do. Master Gu told her that he just wanted to understand something about the situation from her. The native bowed down on all fours and wagged her tail at Master Gu while pleading not to kill her. She promised him that she would tell him everything. She was then surprised when Master Gu touched the top of her head. Master Gu smiled sinisterly as he told her that there was no need, as he was already accustomed to doing such things himself. While still kneeling down, the native screamed in pain as Master Gu started to extract her memories. As he saw through the memories of the native, Master Gu saw that the elders of the natives had decreed the search for Yuling. This made him realize that, despite being someone incredibly powerful, the Heavenly Emperor of Reincarnation was still unable to arrange everything smoothly after his death. He smiled with delight as he obtained quite a lot of information about the slave mark, the 5 ancient ethnic groups, and the Enlightenment platform, which was currently being held by the Black Eagle in charge of the Heavenly Emperor's abode. The native was drooling and already unconscious when Master Gu let go of her. His aura was still dispersing from her eyes and mouth. The native lay lifeless on the invisible platform as Master Gu looked into the horizon. He was thinking about how he doesn't know how long Yuling would take to find the Heavenly Emperor's abode and how he knew that the Black Eagle who was in charge holds the true seal. He decided that he had to do something in the situation. Master Gu seemed to be controlling multiple bird people and thought that he would conveniently try out the secret mystic art that he learned from the god-devouring demonic arts, the wedding dress cultivation art. At an inn, 4 natives were having drinks and a meal together. One of them was leaning by the window, while the rest were sitting at a round table. Only one of them was from the main family, Hai Ming. The 3 others were asking him why the 5 ethnic tribes suddenly mobilized such large amounts of manpower that even those at the heavenly god realm have been enlisted. They speculated that outside world cultivators may have managed to enter their ancestral lands. The one who looked like a minotaur appeared to be drunk, as he hiccuped while calling the outsiders a bunch of useless nobodies. He said that if their clan had not followed the words of the ancient promise they made and moved out into the outside world, there wouldn't be a difference in their current standards. Hai Ming did not agree with what the minotaur said. His heavenly god realm bodyguard was also sent out by his grandfather. It seemed that the severity of the situation had escalated to the point where it was beginning to affect their clan's future. The guy by the window turned to look at them and told them that they should not care and just drink themselves into oblivion. He said that even if the skies were to collapse, Hai Ming shouldn't be the one to spearhead all of this, as he still had his older sister to help him. Hai Ming did not like what the guy just said, so he asked him what he was implying. The guy leaned back nonchalantly at the window while telling him that he has a grandfather who was a clan elder and an older sister who has immense cultivation talent. He even has a heavenly god realm bodyguard around him at all times, even though both of them are trash at cultivating. The guy resembled a snake in appearance as he smiled slyly while telling Haiming that he and his sister were born by the same mother. He was satisfied living in his sister's shadow. He pointed out that he had zero authority even in his own household. Most treated him as an invisible person. He instigated Haiming to think about his situation and asked if he did not wish to change it. Haiming was infuriated and glared at the guy. He intertwined his fingers and leaned on his chin as he thought of his sister. He told them that he was naturally glad that his older sister was so accomplished since they were siblings from the same mother. So he asked the guy what he was trying to instigate. The guy tapped Haiming on the shoulder and told him that they had been friends for so long that he knew about his ambition and desire for more power. He said that he was just waiting for a change, to be gifted with talent just like his sister and to be looked up to by everyone. After saying what he said, he told their other companions that they should go. With how serious the situation currently was, people with little cultivation like them should return home earlier to avoid getting mistakenly killed by others. The three of them left, leaving Haiming, who was still pissed at what happened. Haiming was startled when a voice suddenly asked him if he wished to stand above everyone else. He immediately stood up to look around the room as he asked who was there talking to him. The voice did not answer his question but continued to ask him instead if he wished to be stronger and if he wanted to be a being that stood above everyone else. Haiming now looked terrified as he could not see anyone in the room, while the voice continued to ask him if he wished to cultivate an immortal art and rise above everyone else. A sudden realization hit Haiming as he thought that this could be the fortune that he had always been waiting for. He smiled and eagerly called out to the voice, calling it senior, and told it that he wished to and that he wanted to. Suddenly, a purple aura shrouded him, and he was consumed by its vortex. Haiming looked up and was astounded. He was transported and was now standing in front of a huge gate. The gate started to open, and someone inside was telling Haiming that in order to be under his tutelage, Haiming must leave behind his mortal troubles and be prepared to step into the depths of hell and risk his ability to reincarnate into the next life. An elder was standing in front of the now open gate, and he seemed to know Haiming exceptionally well, about him being from the Black Eagle tribe and about him cultivating his willpower due to being affected by his older sister for most of his life. The elder who gracefully stood in front of Haiming was Master Gu in disguise. He told Haiming that from the moment he was born until now, he understood everything about him. Haiming immediately knelt on the ground and praised the one before him as his senior and a true god. He was now on all fours and was expectantly looking up at the disguised Master Gu, asking how he would become stronger. Master Gu managed to retrieve information about what Haiming's life was like when he was catching a few souls. While Haiming bowed down and requested for the disguised Master Gu to enlighten him, Master Gu was thinking about how strong Haiming's desire was for him to get hooked onto the bait the first time he threw it out. While stroking his long beard, the disguised Master Gu looked down at Haiming with one eye and told him that he was the enlightened omnipotent supreme monarch of fate. He claimed that Haiming would attain immortality upon speaking his true name and become his apostle. He would be able to leave behind a sliver of his true essence in the river of time, even if everything around him turns to dust. Haiming's eyes widened in surprise when he heard what Master Gu said, and he immediately bowed his head down, saying that he was willing to be the omnipotent supreme monarch's apostle and requesting to be taught. Master Gu created a ball of colorful aura and told Haiming that, as his apostle, he would impart some of his skills and knowledge to Haiming. As he told the kneeling Haiming to open up his mind and accept his teachings, Master Gu waved his hand and showered him with his aura, while Haiming thanked him and swore to give everything he had to Master Gu. A golden light struck Haiming's forehead. His eyes widened, and his entire being shook as he absorbed the light. Haiming was full of excitement while staring at his hands, as he found out that he was given the Paving Way Immortal Arts, a technique that ignores talent and has no prerequisite. So as long as he gave the technique to others, he would be able to copy a part of that person's talent and would even share the fruit of their cultivation efforts. With the aura oozing out of his fingers, Haiming looked maniacal as he told Master Gu that the immortal art fit perfectly for him, who lacked talent and thought that it was prepared for him. Master Gu smiled, pleased that the seed had been planted because he knew that once Haiming found out about the terrifying benefit and secret of the technique, his ambition would inflate to the point that it would be difficult to stop himself as the temptation to reap the benefits of others would be too great. Haiming stood up and spread his arms, manically rejoicing about the fact that he had gotten an immortal art and declaring that no one would be able to call him trash anymore. Master Gu turned his back at Haiming, who was now laughing maniacally, and he looked pleased at the thought that he only gave a seed of hope to Haiming, who has been suppressed for all his life, but the trash would now turn into a genius. He saw it as him creating a fortunes chosen for the Black Eagle tribe and thought that with Haiming, it would be much easier for him to carry out his plan of devouring the 5 ethnic tribes. Haiming was alarmed when he noticed that Master Gu was gone, and the door was closing before him. And then he was surprised when he got warped back to the inn he was at earlier. He looked around, and when he realized that he had returned, he thought that Master Gu must truly be an omnipotent supreme monarch with such mysterious abilities. When he checked his aura, he was relieved that he still had the immortal art with him and immediately planned to have a few of his lackeys try it out with the intention of letting everyone in his tribe cultivate with the art. He clenched his fists and smiled sinisterly as he imagined himself being able to share a fraction of everyone's talent and eventually be able to rule over all the 5 ethnic tribes. He was looking forward to how strong he would eventually become, and he was confident that the seat of the future leader would now belong to him. Meanwhile, someone was traveling on the mountaintops with such